Imagine hiding in a boiling pit of manure just to escape a 58-million-year-old titanoboa. That's exactly where Chin Tian finds himself after a luxury cruise crash leaves him and the campus goddess stranded. But luckily, he just awakened a wilderness system that might just keep them alive. Here is how a socially dense student conquered the island's prehistoric food chain. Picture this. You are on a luxury cruise ship ocean trip, enjoying the ocean breeze, when suddenly some high school Chad named Gao Qinyu drops to his knees with a massive bouquet of red roses to confess his love to the school goddess Yilin. The mindless crowd of background characters is screaming at them to date, taking photos on their phones, and comparing them to Jack and Rose from Titanic. Meanwhile, our absolute hero Chin Tian is standing by the railing, completely unbothered, watching survival videos of a guy named Master Da on his phone. Talk about immaculate introvert energy. Chin Tian is literally about to peace out and head home, but someone in the crowd jokes that if this is Titanic, they will all end up swimming in the ocean. The universe takes that jinx way too seriously. Out of nowhere, the sky turns pitch black, massive lightning strikes, and a terrifying storm hits the ship. The alarm blares through the speakers telling all passengers to evacuate the deck immediately. The panicked students scramble everywhere like headless chickens. Running for the cabin, Chin Tian curses out whoever brought up Titanic, realizing that trying to squeeze into the cabin right now is total suicide. Instead of panicking, he spots a bright life buoy attached to the railing, dashes forward, and snatches it right off the deck. Before anyone can even process what is happening, a giant wave flips the entire cruise ship, dragging everyone down into the pitch-black ocean. Just as Chin Tian loses consciousness underwater, a mechanical sound chimes in his brain. The wilderness system is officially activated. The system attempts to award him a newbie gift pack, but since he is completely knocked out, it stores the reward for later. Cut to the next morning. Chin Tian wakes up washed ashore on a sunny, deserted island, still clutching the lifebuoy that literally saved his life. He strips off his soaked shirt, wrings out the water, and immediately starts analyzing his survival odds like an absolute strategist. There are no signs of human life anywhere. He calculates that search and rescue teams usually take at least 6 days to conduct a headcount and deploy, meaning in the worst-case scenario he has to survive alone on this island for over a week. Luckily, he spots plenty of fallen coconuts lying on the sand. Chin Tian pulls out a small pocket knife that he bought back when he got obsessed with Master Da's survival show. He cuts open an old coconut, takes a big gulp, but immediately critiques it like a food reviewer. He notes that the coconut is too old and lacks proper juice, estimating he needs at least 5 coconuts a day just to meet his body's basic needs. While drinking, he remembers that weird voice from earlier. Right on cue, a bright holographic screen pops out of thin air. Chin Tian literally spits his coconut juice out in utter shock. The system asks if he wants to open his newbie gift pack. He taps the floating present icon, only to receive a common plants book and a common animals book. Chin Tian gets instantly tilted, roasting the system devs for giving him reading material on a deserted island. Before he can complain any further, the system bypasses his mouth and downloads the entire textbook database directly into his brain. A blinding aura wraps around his head, Matrix style. Suddenly, he looks at a plain coconut on the beach, and an augmented reality UI pops up, displaying its exact botanical family, height, and properties. Our boy just transformed into a walking survival encyclopedia. But right as he is admiring his new brain cheat codes, a loud female scream echoes from deep inside the jungle. Chin Tian turns around shocked, realizing he might not be the only survivor on this island after all. Chin Tian charges straight into the thick jungle foliage. Tracking that ear-piercing scream, he bursts through the bushes and spots the school's hottie Yilin cowering on the ground in total terror. Right in front of her is a slithering black snake. Thanks to his newly downloaded system knowledge, an augmented reality UI immediately pops up over the reptile, identifying it as a Cynonatrix percoronata, a mildly venomous snake that loves hanging out in moist areas. As the snake rears back and lunges straight for her face, Yilin screams for help, but our boy Chin Tian does not even flinch. He grabs the snake midair and yeets it straight into a tree trunk. He coldly tells her that if she cannot kill it, she at least needs to maim it. Yilin looks up in shock, but before she can even thank her savior, Chin Tian turns his back and casually tells her to put her clothes on first. Turns out Yilin had sneaked into the forest to air-dry her soaked dress, leaving her in a very compromised state. She instantly turns bright red, screaming at him to close his eyes, and scrambles to fix her outfit behind a tree. Talk about an extremely awkward first impression. After fixing her dress, Yilin walks back out to the beach where Qin Tian is sitting by his coconut pile. She is secretly offended that he did not even take a single peek at her. Wondering if her campus goddess charm is completely useless against this guy, she introduces herself as a student from Guangzhou University, and gets overly excited when Qin Tian reveals he goes to the exact same school. She grabs his hands in pure joy, relieved that she is not alone on this creepy island. Qin Tian hands her a coconut shell filled with fresh coconut water, and Yilin downs the whole thing in one massive gulp. Qin Tian silently judges her, thinking to himself that women really are made of water considering how fast she drank that. He asks if she managed to salvage any phones or radios, but she admits all her belongings were swallowed by the ocean. Yilin tries to stay hopeful, claiming that a huge shipwreck involving thousands of people will definitely trigger a massive search and rescue operation. Qin Tian respects her optimism, but he knows better than to rely purely on luck to keep her busy. He points out that they urgently need to build a bonfire before nightfall to ward off poisonous bugs and creepy crawlies. The mere mention of snakes instantly cures her laziness, and she agrees to help. An hour passes as they walk down the coastline, but Yilin groans in frustration because the beach is completely spotless. Qin Tian realizes something is seriously wrong. The cruise ship crashed close to shore, yet there is zero floating debris or trash anywhere. It is almost like this island is completely cut off from the rest of the world. Suddenly, Yilin spots something shiny in the sand. She kneels down, hoping for loot, but groans when it turns out to be just a clear plastic bottle filled with water. She is about to throw it into the ocean, but Qin Tian yells at her to stop, snatching it like he just found a legendary artifact. Yilin looks at him like he lost his mind, asking what is so special about trash. Qin Tian just smirks, gathers a pile of dry leaves and twigs, and holds the water-filled plastic bottle directly above them. Using his system-infused science knowledge, he turns the bottle into a literal magnifying lens, concentrating the sunlight into a high-energy beam. Within seconds, smoke starts rising, and a bright crackling fire erupts on the sand. Yilin jumps up and down in pure awe, cheering at the blazing fire. Qin Tian flexes his survival intellect, proving that high school physics and a system cheat code can turn literal garbage into life-saving heat. The next morning starts with Qin Tian roasting fresh crabs over the bonfire. Yilin is ready to devour the entire seafood buffet, but Qin Tian snatches the crab shells away. He lectures her like a strict nutritionist, explaining that overeating crab tamale will destroy her stomach, since they cannot survive on crab and ocean breeze forever. Qin Tian announces they need to head into the forest to build a shelter and hunt for fresh water. Yilin points at a tall coconut tree, asking if climbing it is dangerous. Qin Tian deadpans, asking if she wants to climb it instead. To pull off this vertical feat, Qin Tian ties his belt around his boots for extra friction, puts his pocket knife in his mouth like a ninja, and scales the giant palm tree. He hacks down fresh coconuts, fills up their plastic bottle, and warns Yilin not to chug too much coconut juice unless she wants explosive diarrhea. Before leaving the beach, they spell out a giant SOS on the sand using rocks and leftover shells, just in case a rescue plane flies overhead. As they trek into the dense jungle, Qin Tian keeps analyzing the surrounding bushes. Yilin offers Qin Tian a drink from their bottle, strictly warning him not to let his lips touch the rim like a paranoid roommate. Yilin asks why he keeps scanning the ground, and Qin Tian reveals his high-brain deduction. The snake from yesterday was a red-banded snake, meaning a freshwater source must be close by. He scans the grass, tracking animal paths where branches are bent in one direction, flexing his Bear Grylls knowledge. Yilin calls him a total nerd, making Qin Tian question if that was a compliment or an insult. Suddenly, the sound of rushing water echoes through the trees. Qin Tian grabs Yilin's hand, dashes through the bush, and discovers a pristine freshwater river. He kneels down and splashes his face, while Yilin is calmly holding water in her hands, thinking she is about to chug dirty river water. Qin Tian's sweat drops. She reassures that she knows basic biology and would never drink unboiled river water. She isn't stupid. Yilin suggests building their tent right by the river, but Qin Tian shuts that down real fast. Camping next to a waterhole is a magnet for wild predators and flash floods. Instead, he finds a flat clear clearing with tall trees. He gives Yilin his knife to gather giant plantain leaves, while he handles the heavy construction. Judging by the sun, it is already 2 p.m., so Qin Tian works against the clock. He uses his plastic bottle trick to ignite a fire, then smacks 2 sharp stones together to craft a primitive DIY stone axe. He chops down 9 massive trees, hauling 30-kilogram logs like an absolute beast thanks to his summer job experience on his dad's sugarcane farm. Yilin returns proudly holding giant plantain leaves like an anime fairy. Together, they bind the logs using stripped tree bark as rope and drive sharpened wooden stakes into the soil. Qin Tian drapes the giant leaves over the frame, finishing a sturdy lean-to-windbreak shelter just as the sun sets. Yilin stares at the construction with a completely deadpan expression, roasting him because the tent literally only has one wall. Qin Tian frantically defends his work, explaining it blocks the ocean wind and traps heat. But right on cue, a system notification chimes in his head, awarding him 1,000 points for successfully building a shabby tent. Qin Tian twitches in pure rage at the system roasting his hard work, while smiling awkwardly at Yilin. Qin Tian begins the evening by literally suspending a plastic bottle of water directly over the open fire. Yilin freaks out, asking if boiling water in plastic is going to flood their bodies with toxic microplastics. Qin Tian cold-heartedly tells her not to drink it then, but she immediately chugs it down anyway. Suddenly, Yilin slaps Qin Tian's arm with full force, trying to kill a giant mountain mosquito. Qin Tian rubs his swollen arm, warning her that wild jungle mosquitoes are pure toxicity and can trigger high fevers. As a massive swarm descends on their camp, Qin Tian whistles a strange luring frequency he learned from a town elder, drawing the bugs toward the flame. Then he drops damp green branches onto the fire, creating a massive smoke bomb that drives the entire mosquito army away. As night settles in, Qin Tian suggests taking turns staying on guard against wild beasts, but before Yilin can even agree, she passes out cold, sleeping completely upright like an NPC. Qin Tian sighs, gently lays her down, and decides to pull an all-nighter himself to pass the time. He strips tree bark and weaves sturdy ropes until sunrise. When morning comes, Yilin wakes up well-rested and stretching, while Qin Tian turns around looking like a hollow zombie with terrifying pitch-black eye circles. Yilin panics, feeling super guilty, and promises to cover night guard duty tonight. They trek along the river to forage for food. Qin Tian spots red berries in the bushes, and his system UI identifies them as wild raspberries packed with kidney-clearing vitamins. He offers one to Yilin, who takes a bite and instantly makes a hysterical sour face. Qin Tian smirks, reminding her that wild berries do not fully ripen until late spring. Next, they spot a tall plantain tree. Since the trunk is too weak to climb, Qin Tian ties a stone to his new rope, hurls it over the massive fruit bunch, and yanks with all his strength. The entire heavy bunch crashes down, nearly crushing them both. Qin Tian offers her a green plantain, but she accuses him of using her as a laboratory test rat. Qin Tian peels it, takes a bite, and instantly regrets it. The wild plantain is rock-hard and packed with giant inedible seeds. Undeterred, Qin Tian strips open the plantain leaves, revealing giant wriggling leaf miner larvae. He expects Yilin to scream in disgust, but she looks at the fat bugs with pure curiosity. Qin Tian explains that these larvae pack 6 times the protein of beef. He grills them on a flat hot stone over the fire, and Yilin devours them with chopsticks, claiming they taste better than grilled snake and tamale. After breakfast, Qin Tian pulls out his pocket knife and slices their only plastic water bottle in half. Yilin screams in horror, thinking he has lost his sanity, but Qin Tian flips the top funnel inside out into the bottle base, constructing an inverted fish trap. Ding! The system awards him 200 points for crafting a shabby fish trap. Yilin asks how they will boil drinking water without a bottle now. Qin Tian drops another big brain survival hack, explaining they can pour river water into coconut shells and drop red-hot campfire rocks directly inside to boil the water instantly. With their new fish trap ready, they march back toward the river to catch some real meat. Qin Tian sets his new plastic bottle fish trap in a shaded river spot, anchoring it with heavy rocks and baiting it with juicy leaf miner larvae. As they head back, Yilin suddenly sniffs the air, following a refreshing aroma into the forest. They stumble upon a wild patch of peppermint plants. The system UI confirms that peppermint oil contains natural menthol that completely repels mosquitoes. Yilin gets hyper-hyped, and they uproot massive bundles of mint to plant a green defense perimeter around their tent. Ding! The system awards Qin Tian 200 points for crafting his stone axe earlier. Qin Tian smirks like a greedy game villain, realizing he can farm system points just by crafting daily items. Yilin stares at him giggling over a rock axe, wondering if he has officially lost his mind. Next, they walk back down to the beach to retrieve their stored coconuts, only to find the shells completely cracked open and hollowed out. Yilin freaks out, asking if a lion or tiger attacked their stash. Chin Tian roasts her logic, reminding her that lions are pure carnivores. They follow claw marks on the palm tree and spot the culprit, a massive 5-kilogram coconut crab. When the crab climbs down to ground level, Chin Tian smirks with terrifying villainous eyes. He drops a whole coconut in front of the crab, lets it use its massive armored claws to crack the hard shell, and then immediately snatches the opened coconut away. The crab gets visibly furious, so it cracks open a second coconut, and Chin Tian snatches that one too. After exploiting the crab as an unpaid manual laborer to open all their food, Chin Tian grabs the crab by its shell, stuffs it into his bag, and declares victory. Yilin deadpants, calling his petty revenge completely ruthless. On their walk back along the shore, Yilin gets hit with a sudden wave of anxiety, worrying that rescue teams might have abandoned them, but she slaps her own cheeks, trying to stay positive. They return to the river and pull up the bottle trap, finding 3 fresh fish trapped inside. Ding! The system awards 500 points for the catch, pushing Chin Tian total balance up to 2,000 points. Back at camp, Yilin builds a stone fire ring, and they roast both the fish and the giant coconut crab over the open flame. The crab meat is sweet and salty, tasting like luxury seafood. Stuffed and exhausted, Chin Tian falls asleep inside the tent, while Yilin is up for guard duty. Later that night, she is sitting terrified of wild beasts, nervously gripping her stone axe in the dark. When Chin Tian reaches out to switch shifts, Yilin screams in terror and swings the heavy stone axe directly at his face. Chin Tian dodges for his life, deadpanning that she is way too dangerous with a weapon and needs to go back to sleep. Once Yilin is safely tucked away, Chin Tian sits alone by the glowing campfire. If you guys like these type of recaps, please consider subscribing and check out my other videos. It really helps. Late that night, Chin Tian chews fresh mint leaves to stay awake on guard duty. While drinking boiled water, he overhears Yilin sleep talking inside the tent, sobbing in her sleep and begging rescue teams to save them. Chin Tian realizes that behind her cheerful smile, she is actually terrified of being abandoned on this island. Determined to keep her safe, Chin Tian opens his system shop with his hard-earned 2,000 points. The shop offers illustrated books for survival, so he purchases the Tools Illustrated book. Blinding knowledge floods his brain, giving him instant blueprints to craft pottery, arrows, and even paper. To top it off, the system grants him a free lucky roulette spin for making his first purchase. He taps start, and the wheel lands on a rare reward, agility of a cheetah. Chin Tian decides to save the skill for an emergency. Morning breaks, and Chin Tian is outside roasting fresh fish on sticks. Yilin wakes up, pouting at him for not waking her. Then she announces she is heading down to the river alone. Chin Tian blurts out if she is going to poop, telling her to bury it so wild beasts do not smell it. Yilin turns bright red and screams at the top of her lungs that she is going to shower, not poop. Chin Tian sweat drops, realizing he just made an extremely awkward social blunder. While Yilin showers, Chin Tian goes foraging in the forest. He finds hoof fungus growing on a tree trunk, which the system identifies as non-edible mushrooms that act as long-lasting firewood. Suddenly, a wild rabbit dashes out of the bush. Knowing wild rabbits run at 70 kilometers an hour, Chin Tian throws his stone axe to spook it, then sprints full speed ahead. He dives through the air, but the rabbit jukes him like Bugs Bunny, leaving Chin Tian face first in the dirt. He brushes the mud off his clothes and follows his footprints back to camp. Just as he approaches, a piercing scream echoes from the river. Chin Tian sprints toward the water, finding Yilin naked in the water, screaming in terror of a snake. Chin Tian leaps straight into the river, reaches into the water, and grabs the creature barehanded. He holds it up in triumph, revealing it is actually a massive wild swamp eel. The system confirms it is non-venomous, packed with delicious fat, and skilled at digging tunnels. Yilin yells at him to get the slimy thing away from her, so Chin Tian steps onto the riverbank to wait for her to finish dressing. As Chin Tian admires his new fat eel dinner, Yilin fixes her dress behind a tree, blushing out of her mind. When she steps out with wet braided hair, she notices Chin Tian staring at her. She nervously asks why he is looking at her like that. Chin Tian blushes slightly, clears his throat, and casually drops a smooth line, telling her it is because she is pretty. Yilin turns redder than a ripe tomato, lets out a squeal, and runs all the way back to the tent in pure embarrassment. Chin Tian stands alone by the tree holding a wiggling eel, completely cringing at his own unscripted smooth talk. Qin Tian marches back to the riverbank, fully determined to wipe out the local swamp eel population like a menace. He locates their muddy underwater tunnels, suddenly remembering a ridiculously dumb high school memory where he reached into a hole barehanded and got bitten by a snake. Seriously. Who shoves their bare hand into random dark holes in the wild to avoid getting his fingers bitten off again? He weaves a tough water plant into a makeshift fishing line, dangling it inside the burrow. Within seconds, a massive eel bites down, and Qin Tian yanks out two huge slippery monsters. He carries them back to camp like a proud fisherman showing off his daily loot, since they cannot eat two giant eels before the meat turns into a biohazard. Qin Tian sets up a DIY smoking rack over the campfire. He gives Yilin a side quest to weave tree bark into ropes, basically keeping her occupied like a toddler in a daycare while he handles the actual survival work. With 3 days' worth of smoked protein secured, Qin Tian checks his plastic bottle trap at the river, reinforcing their campsite against potential spring floods because he is paranoid like a doomsday prepper. That evening, Chef Qin Tian serves the smoked eel topped with fresh wild raspberries. Yilin takes a single bite with her chopsticks and immediately enters full Food Wars anime food orgasm mode. I am talking background cherry blossoms. Not what you sick people imagine. She closes her eyes, dramatically preaching about the heavenly harmony between sweet sour berries and smoky eel meat dancing on her tongue. Honestly, Gordon Ramsay could never. Qin Tian smirks, casually reminding her that it would be actual paradise if they were not currently stranded on a deserted island. The next morning, Qin Tian carves a star on a tree trunk to mark his path, because getting lost twice in a row would ruin his Sigma male image. His main mission today is hunting wild rabbits. He brings a piece of smoldering hoof fungus to use as a makeshift tear gas grenade. We see a 2 days flashback. Qin Tian disassembled the windbreaker and built a proper tent, which protects not only from wind but rain and keep the inside warmer. Back to present. Finding a massive rabbit burrow with 5 exit holes, Qin Tian blocks 3 of the escape routes with heavy boulders, then pumps thick fungus smoke directly into the main entrance like a SWAT team officer. Within minutes, a tiny panicked bunny scrambles out of the unblocked exit. Qin Tian lunges forward and snatches it by the scruff. But then a massive mother rabbit dashes right past his feet. Qin Tian peers inside the smoky hole and discovers 3 adorable baby bunnies huddled together. 30 minutes later, he struts back to camp carrying an entire bunny family like grocery bags. Yilin gasps in pure joy, running over to cuddle the fluffy little rabbits. Qin Tian fully expects her to cry, throw a massive temper tantrum, and forbid him from cooking them. He offers to go clean the meat by the river. But Yilin hugs the bunny close and unleashes her terrifying inner butcher. She looks at the tiny rabbits, smirking like a ruthless RimWorld player, and says they should raise the baby bunnies first so they can fatten them up for a bigger feast later. Qin Tian sweat drops in absolute horror, realizing his cute waifu companion is secretly a bloodthirsty livestock farmer. Yilin whispers a fake apology to the mother rabbit, deciding they will eat the mom today and farm her children for future meals. Qin Tian heads down to the river, drains the mother rabbit blood, cleans the meat, and saves her thick pelt thinking they might come in handy later. Dinner starts with Qin Tian serving roasted rabbit, but Yilin complains that the meat tastes way too bloody. Girl, you are stranded on a deserted island, not dining at a 5-star Michelin restaurant. Qin Tian cold-heartedly tells her to stick to fish. Yilin happily eats fish instead, counting down the hours because tomorrow is day 7. The day she delusionally expects a rescue helicopter to swoop in. Knowing rescue is a total gamble, Qin Tian decides to grind his survival stats. He uses his system book to practice primitive fire making, spinning a wooden bow drill like a caveman trying to summon fire magic. He blows on the smoking tinder like a dramatic wizard until actual flames burst out. The morning of day 7 arrives. Yilin asks if they should release the bunnies since they are leaving today, but Qin Tian lies through his teeth to keep their emergency food supply safe. They march down to the shore, staring at the empty blue ocean for hours. But as the sun sets with 0 rescue boats in sight, Yilin officially loses her mind. She enters a full-blown existential crisis, crying hysterically and screaming that everyone abandoned them to die. To break her out of the panic attack, Qin Tian delivers the most aggressive anime hysteria slap right across her face. He tells her it is okay to cry, and Yilin collapses into his chest, weeping her eyes out all night. But do not think she forgot about that smack. The very next morning, Yilin walks up to Qin Tian and slaps him straight back in the face with maximum velocity. She smiles cheerfully, thanking him for comforting her yesterday, but insisting that the delayed slap was pure mandatory get back. Respect the pettiness. Chin Tian then drops an absolute nerd bomb. Flexing his ocean tide physics knowledge, he breaks down how tides shift 48 minutes later every single day, calculating that today low tide is 4 hours and 48 minutes late. Chin Tian bonks her head for overthinking, but warns her that official search teams usually give up after a month. He tells her they might need to pull a castaway move, build their own raft, and sail across the ocean. They trek back to camp and inspect the wooden rabbit cage, discovering the brilliant bunnies were literally 2 bites away from gnawing their way to freedom. Yilin cooks up fresh seafood over the fire, and Chin Tian tells her to hoard the clamshells for future crafting tools like a true RPG hoarder. Exhausted from pulling back-to-back all-nighters, Chin Tian begs Yilin to wake him up at midnight so he can take guard duty. When the sun rises, Chin Tian wakes up shocked to find out he slept the entire night. He looks over at Yilin and is mortified to see her standing there looking like a Skyrim NPC after a 72-hour gaming binge. She has massive pitch-black zombie circles under her eyes because she let him sleep out of pity. Chin Tian sweat drops, telling the walking ghost waifu to go pass out while he grabs his stone axe to forage for loot. Chin Tian treks through the forest at 9 in the morning, grinding for resources, when he hits an absolute survival jackpot. Right in front of him is a dense bamboo forest. Using his system crafting blueprints, he knows bamboo is basically nature cheat codes. He hacks at the green stalks with his stone axe, complaining about how hard it vibrates through his hands like he is using a low-tier Minecraft wooden pickaxe. By the evening, he hauls a massive bundle of bamboo back to camp, where Yilin eagerly greets him with a surprise dinner. She hands him a skewer of grilled fish, but Chin Tian stares at it in total horror. The fish is so burnt it looks like a block of coal or an actual hate crime against seafood. Yilin looks at him with adorable starry eyes, asking if her cooking is good. Chin Tian takes a bite, internally dying from the bitter toxicity, but lies through his teeth like the ultimate gentleman simping for survival. Yilin gets excited and takes a bite herself, only to instantly gag and spit it out, crying that she ruined their precious food. Chin Tian reassures her that everyone starts somewhere, and forces himself to eat the charcoal stick anyway like a true gigachad. That night, Chin Tian starts chopping bamboo to upgrade their gear. He explains that their plastic bottle trap is way too small, so he is crafting a giant woven bamboo trap. He gives Yilin the job of slicing bamboo water canteens, and she gets hyper-enthusiastic about contributing. Chin Tian lets out an evil anime villain laugh, secretly planning to overwork her like an unpaid IT intern. Ding! The system awards him 500 points for crafting a shabby bamboo fish trap. The next morning, they march deep into the bamboo forest together. Chin Tian hands Yilin his knife, instructing her to search for fresh bamboo shoots. Yilin searches the forest floor and finds a cluster of delicious shoots. But just as she celebrates, a terrifying menacing growl vibrates through the trees. She turns around and spots a wild boar sniffing the bushes. Yilin covers her mouth, sneaks away like a ninja, and sprints back to Chin Tian, screaming that an entire herd of 8 boars is heading their way. Chin Tian grabs her hand, knowing wild boars are aggressive tank units in the wild. But before they can escape, a giant 2-meter alpha boar steps out of the bamboo, blocking their exit like a Dark Souls boss. The system UI pops up, warning that wild boars are ferocious omnivores capable of killing young tigers. Chin Tian puts his finger to his lips, telling Yilin to walk away quietly, but the giant boar sniffs the air. Its eyes turn blood red, and it lets out a demonic snarl. Chin Tian screams in pure panic, snatches Yilin's hand, and sprints for his life like he is running from a raid boss. Chin Tian and Yilin sprint through the bamboo forest with an angry wild boar herd hot on their heels. Yilin gasps for air, suddenly stopping and pulling a full main character drama self-sacrifice move. She gets all dramatic about getting eaten alive, begging Chin Tian to abandon her and save himself. Girl, this is a survival situation, not an Oscar-winning romantic tragedy. Chin Tian roasts her delusional movie star energy, knowing abandoning her is a total non-option. So he stops running, turns around, and prepares to pull the most absurd bluff in anime history. Knowing boars in groups are terrified of getting hurt, Chin Tian pounds his chest like Tarzan having a rage moment and lets out a primal roar. He raises his stone axe, screaming at them to get lost. The intimidation check actually passes, and the boar herd turns tail and runs away like scared toddlers. But right as Chin Tian catches his breath, one giant scar-faced alpha boar stays behind, glaring at him with pure Dark Souls boss energy. A wounded lone boar is 10 times more aggressive. Qin Tian smacks the alpha boar with his axe, kiting it away so Yilin can escape back to the safety of the tent. Once Yilin is gone, Qin Tian opens his system menu and hits the NOS button, activating his skill card. Agility of a cheetah. Boom! He turns into a human speed demon. Zooming through the forest at supersonic speeds like Sonic the Hedgehog, he blasts 2 kilometers away in seconds, leaving the boar eating dust. But as the cheat code wears off, Qin Tian crashes onto the grass, gasping for air and realizing human lungs are definitely not built for cheetah cardio. Before he can even catch his breath, the ground starts trembling. The relentless boar literally tracked his scent across 2 whole kilometers. Talk about a dedicated hater. Qin Tian panics, scrambling up a tall tree like a terrified house cat. But this boar is an absolute wrecking ball. It lowers its head and starts headbutting the tree trunk like a battering ram, wobbling the entire tree. Just as Qin Tian prepares to jump for his life, the boar suddenly stops, huffing and bleeding out from its previous battle wounds. Qin Tian stares down at the exhausted beast. Realizing this 100-kilogram unit is a whole month worth of unlimited bacon, he drops off the tree branch, draws his pocket knife, and goes full monster hunter. He leaps onto the boar back, plunging the blade straight into its skull. The boar bucks wildly, throwing Qin Tian into the dirt. But Qin Tian tackles the beast once more, driving the knife deep into its neck until the monster finally collapses. Ding! The system awards him a whopping 2,000 points for soloing the raid boss. Covered in dirt and blood, Qin Tian lies on the grass in complete exhaustion. Realizing the blood scent will attract every meat eater on the island, he uses leafy branches to sweep leaves over the massive carcass, literally trying to hide a 100-kilogram dead boar like a broken vase under a rug. Yilin is out here tearing her dress hem like Lara Croft, packing fireplace ashes into little pouches, preparing the ultimate disrespect of throwing pocket sand in a boar's eyes if things go sideways. She is convinced her survival partner is doomed. But right on cue, Qin Tian casually strolls back into Camp Flex holding a fresh catch of fish. Yilin drops her ash bombs and instantly launches herself into his chest for a full dramatics anime hug. She is practically crying tears of joy, while Qin Tian stands there completely unbothered. He nonchalantly peels off his soaked shirt to dry it out. When he starts removing his pants, Yilin immediately short-circuit from the unexpected front-row stripping show. She covers her blushing face like a Victorian maiden. While Qin Tian just stands there a little embarrassed, Yilin tells him he better dry his damp clothes by the bonfire so he does not catch a cold. Yilin screams in total embarrassment when he suddenly drops his pants. But Qin Tian ignores her squeaking and drops a massive bomb. He actually soloed the giant boar from earlier and hid the carcass near the bamboo forest. Yilin freaks out at the thought of going back into boss territory. So Qin Tian hits her with a deep anime flashback story about a fisherman's family overcoming a tsunami to prove a point. The lesson is simple. Running away forever gets you killed in this game, so they are going to craft a bamboo longbow and go full monster hunter on the wildlife. The next morning, Qin Tian tells Yilin to guard the fish traps and please not burn breakfast. He activates his cheetah speed buff trial card before it expires at noon. He arrives at the carcass to find local scavengers taking a few bites, but the prime leg meat is still totally intact. While carving off the tough hide for blankets, he notices terrifying gouges in the ribs. Realizing some unseen island apex predator mangled this boar before him, Qin Tian extracts tendons for bowstrings, packs 50 pounds of pork on his back, and sprints home while Yilin grinds rabbit bones back at camp. Qin Tian teleports back into base and almost gives Yilin a heart attack while she is carving a needle out of rabbit bone. But her terror vanishes the second she sees massive pork legs, going completely feral over pig feet like a Michelin star chef. Qin Tian pulls out raw fat to render into lard, and when Yilin asks how they will boil anything without cookware, Qin Tian decides it is time to unlock the pottery age. Qin Tian pulls up his system database like a Minecraft wiki page, analyzing 6 different clay crafting methods. He skips the complex tools and selects the coiling technique, rolling out mud snakes to build bowls with his bare hands. However, Qin Tian's first attempt ends in utter tragedy, when his clay masterpiece turns out looking like a literal, undeniable pile of poop. Yilin stares in dead silence while Qin Tian smashes it in pure embarrassment, begging her to pretend she saw nothing. He resets his dignity, completes a decent bowl and lets Yilin try, only for her to instantly flex god-tier artisan skill on her very first attempt. Qin Tian digs out a pit kiln to bake their cookware properly, grinding late into the evening like a true survival jigachad. By nightfall, they are living like island royalty. Roasting prime pork ribs over an open fire, Yilin notices Qin Tian smiling like a villain who just won the lottery, and shows off his shirt, neatly mended with her handmade bone needle, with infinite pork, custom pottery, and a cheat engine system. Qin Tian stretches under the night sky. Knowing this island is officially his kingdom, Qin Tian starts his morning chewing on a charred stick, dropping Dr. Stone-level wisdom on Yilin by explaining that charcoal powder makes a top-tier DIY toothpaste. They check their clay kiln. Realizing these homemade pots take 5 whole hours to bake, Qin Tian assigns Yilin to pot molding duty. While he watches the fire like a hawk to prevent cracking, noon rolls around and it is an utter disaster. Almost every pot explodes in the heat except for one solitary survivor, refusing to take an L. Qin Tian smashes the failed pots into fine powder, mixing it back into fresh clay to boost viscosity. By evening, his big brain recovery strategy pays off with a flawless batch of sturdy stoneware. The next morning, Qin Tian boils boar fat into lard, before randomly smashing seashells on a rock. When Yilin asks why he is acting strange, Qin Tian casually drops the ultimate survival bomb. Announcing they are making homemade soap, Yilin loses her mind with joy, while Qin Tian gives a high school chemistry lecture on saponification. Qin Tian bakes calcium carbonate into lye, while Yilin fans away carbon dioxide fumes with leaves like a loyal anime assistant. He mixes the solution with pig fat, explaining that on a deserted island with 0 hospitals, hygiene soap is literally the difference between life and a lethal infection. Qin Tian slurps up the residual pan oil like a true street food connoisseur. Ignoring Yilin's horrified face, they stir the soap mixture until sunset, setting it aside to harden overnight while rain clouds begin gathering on the horizon. While fast wind blows, Qin Tian opens his system UI, flexing a crisp 6,000 system points earned from crafting pots and soap. Yilin walks out freshly showered, her hair clean and smelling amazing. Qin Tian casually hands her a custom hand-carved wooden comb, acting like he didn't just spend hours making it. He puts Yilin on boar skin scraping duty, while he starts heat-treating green bamboo over the fire. Since natural drying takes 2 years, he uses fire-bending techniques to shape sturdy arcs for compound bows. After grinding for a full day, thunder shakes the island. Qin Tian frantically scrambles through the rain, stashing raw boar meat and tendons inside their newly baked clay pots to stop them from rotting. Sheltered inside their tent, a heavy downpour hits the camp, but their thatched roof holds up like a champ. On dinner time, Yilin praises Qin Tian for being a high school science genius, and they chatted like this for a while before bed. But their cozy sleep is instantly shattered by massive seismic vibrations. Yilin wakes up thinking it is breakfast time, but Qin Tian grabs her arm and screams to knock down their shelter support posts immediately. Yilin panics in confusion, but Qin Tian drags her up a giant tree, shushing her as a frantic stampede of deer and rabbits bursts through their camp. Yilin thinks the danger passed, but Qin Tian points down as a massive herd of over 20 enraged wild boars charges through the mud. While the other boars ran off, 2 stayed behind. The heavy rain covers their human scent, but as Qin Tian looks closer, his blood runs cold. The massive boars are trembling and covered in deep, whip-like lash wounds. Qin Tian realizes with horror that whatever mystery apex predator did this, wiped out an entire boar herd for fun. Up in the tree, Yilin is shivering violently from hypothermia, forcing Qin Tian to pull off the ultimate galaxy brain distraction tactic by yeeting his shoe into the distant bushes. The shoe thuds, the 2 boar snarls, and charges off into the dark like angry video game NPCs chasing a fake audio lure. With the boars gone, Qin Tian tells Yilin to jump down so he can catch her, but she instantly slips on a wet branch and crashes directly on top of him in a textbook romance anime tumble. Yilin sprouts a massive cartoon lump on her forehead, while the system randomly flashes a 3,000-point mission completion reward. Qin Tian shouts 3,000 points out loud like a madman. Leaving Yilin utterly confused, they inspect the camp, realizing that knocking down their shelter posts actually saved their rabbits and meat traps from getting flattened. While picking up smashed soap blocks, Qin Tian casually asks Yilin to hand over her underwear so he can conserve soap while washing her clothes. Yeah bro, sure she was gonna hand over her underwear. While you are at it, might as well ask her for a blow. Yilin goes absolute demon mode, screaming that it is her only pair. Qin Tian smartly pivots away to check the river, relieved they did not set up camp near the swollen, overflowing bank. Qin Tian wades into the raging water to save his fish trap, before wrapping giant plantain leaves around his waist like a primitive fashion statement while his clothes dry. That night by the campfire, Yilin gets anxious about another boar raid. So Qin Tian promises to stay on guard and finish his compound bow. Still rocking his leaf skirt, Qin Tian goes full master blacksmith. Binding bamboo limbs with rope, wrapping handles in soft rabbit fur, and shredding dried pig tendons with his teeth to weave a custom bowstring. He tests the draw flex, grabs wet branches, and burns sturdy arrow shafts over the fire. He shapes sharp stone arrowheads and attaches leaf fletchings, triggering a system alert that awards 2,000 points for crafting. Now sitting on a massive 11,000 system points, Qin Tian browses the store between bull strength and cheetah speed. Realizing raw power will not save him from an entire herd, he buys cheetah speed like a true agility build main. The system executes a full body reconstruction, blasting Qin Tian with a golden aura upgrade that leaves him feeling lighter, stronger, and fully rested. The next day, they clean up camp debris, while Yilin flexes her speedrunning skills by baking a new batch of clay pots twice as fast. 2 days later, Qin Tian steps out to test his new weapon, having zero real archery experience. Qin Tian misses his first target tree by a mile, but after grinding target practice all day, he transforms into a budget Hawkeye who sometimes miss. The next morning, he hikes into the damp woods, spots giant tadpoles living in leaf puddles, and arrives at the bamboo forest to harvest fresh sprouts. Qin Tian hears rustling and spots wild pheasants. Immediately dreaming of hot pheasant soup, he draws his bow and fires, but misses completely because the birds keep bobbing around like glitching target dummies. Qin Tian sneaks closer, locks in his aim, and snipes a pheasant straight through the neck. The system awards 200 points, prompting Qin Tian to go full rapid-fire mode, sniping 2 more birds in seconds. Running out of arrows, he collects his loot. Qin Tian lifts the clay lid off their steaming pot, unleashing a wave of gourmet pheasant and bamboo sprout soup. Yilin takes one single spoon lick and undergoes a full Food Wars-style culinary awakening, floating through a field of magical birds while praising the flavor profile. Qin Tian notes that adding salt would make it literally divine, causing Yilin to realize they have been speedrunning sodium deficiency for 2 straight weeks. Qin Tian breaks down the medical reality of fluid imbalance and weak limbs, promising to kickstart salt production tomorrow while recycling pheasant feathers for arrow fletchings. The next morning, they set up shop at the beach to boil seawater. While waiting for the pots to sizzle, Qin Tian decides to craft a precision mud sundial so they can stop living like uncultured cavemen. He flattens out a square mud slab, uses a string like a geometric compass, and carves out a circular clock face. He lectures Yilin on equatorial alignment and seasonal sun angles, while Yilin flexes her high school honors intellect by predicting the exact axis angles. When she asks if they should craft a sextant next to calculate longitude and latitude, Qin Tian admits they do not need to go that hard on navigation math just yet. Sunlight hits its shortest shadow, calibrating their newly minted sundial to exactly 12 o'clock noon. Qin Tian inspects the boiled ocean water, scooping up 200 grams of raw salt. He takes a taste test and instantly regrets his life choices, gagging on bitter sand impurities. Determined to refine his salt stack, Qin Tian builds a multi-tier filtration rig. He stacks pebbles, coarse sand, fine sand, and charcoal inside a perforated bamboo chute, running the salty brine through the layers to strip away bitter minerals. By 6 o'clock on the sundial, they drop the refined white salt into their pheasant broth. Yilin takes another bite and ascends straight into flavor nirvana again. She checks the calendar, noting it is officially day 22 on this death island. When Yilin asks about building an escape boat, Qin Tian sets realistic expectations. Ocean travel requires a massive fishing vessel build, meaning step 1 is building a secure, upgraded main base. Yilin agrees that their current location is a giant target for wild boar herds, prompting Qin Tian to go scouting 4 days later. He reaches the bright edge of the jungle, discovering a beautiful open plain with a massive rock cave. Seeking a storm-proof megabase, Qin Tian fires a warning arrow inside to check for aggressive mobs, hearing only the thud against stone. He steps into the cave, only to trip over a bone-chilling pile of slaughtered animal skeletons. Before he can process the creature radar warning, a massive shadow drops from the ceiling. Qin Tian pops Cheetah's agility, executing a high-speed dodge roll just as a red-eyed black and white nightmare swipes at his face. Qin Tian realizes this apex predator is a giant panda, desperate to pacify the beast. He tosses a fresh bamboo sprout at its feet. The demonic panda sniffs the offering, then brutally crunches through the solid bamboo like a pretzel stick. It lets out an earth-shattering roar. Standing tall with blood-red eyes and a terrifying inverted coat pattern, Qin Tian stands his ground, Realizing he just stumbled into the territorial boss fight of a lifetime, Qin Tian realizes fighting this demonic panda head-on is suicide. So he uses his speed to gain distance and scales a tree. The massive beast strolls right under him, proving its eyesight and smell are totally garbage. Qin Tian takes aim from the high ground, whispering a polite apology before letting an arrow fly. The arrow hits, but bounces right off the panda's thick hide like a plastic toy dart. The panda turns around with glowing red eyes. So Qin Tian pops his cheetah speed buff to dash away. He loads a stone-tipped arrow, takes aim at its head, and lands a direct hit. But the stone tip snaps like a dry cracker, leaving the panda even more enraged. Realizing the beast literally has a skull made of reinforced steel, Qin Tian barely dodges a terrifying claw swipe and decides to call an audible. Running out of energy, he retreats back to camp to brainstorm a new strategy. That night, Yilin suggests just finding a different cave. But Qin Tian refuses to give up. He pulls out his steel belt buckle, planning to forge a high-tier armor-piercing steel arrowhead. To conserve metal, he plans to tie a rope to the arrow so he can reel it back like a fishing harpoon. He lectures Yilin on how charcoal fires only reach 700 degrees, meaning they need 1500 degrees to melt steel. To achieve max forge temperatures, they build a custom pneumatic bellows. Qin Tian handles the carpentry while Yilin carves the arrowhead mold out of clay. Yilin roasts Qin Tian about his pants falling down without a belt, but he casually shoots back asking if she is ready for his pantsless era. They crank the bellows continuously, pushing the kiln fire to absolute maximum heat. Liquid metal fills the mold. Yilin collapses onto the grass completely drained, and Qin Tian grinds the cooled steel tip, earning 500 system points for unlocking Metal Gear. That night, Qin Tian sharpens his shiny new steel arrowhead, while Yilin sleeps like a baby, sitting on 4,700 system points. He opens the system shop to buy the Wild Animals Encyclopedia. The system pushes a 4,500-point bundle deal including animal taming. So Qin Tian smashes the buy button like an impulsive shopper. He opens the taming manual expecting pro tips, but gets hit with pure brain rot. Step 1 for taming a kangaroo: slide under its legs and attack its anus. Qin Tian stares in utter disbelief as the guide moves to hippos, instructing him to slide under the hippo, slap its private parts until it passes out, and beat its backside. The final guide for orangutans tells him to piss off the ape, slide under it, grab an AK-47, and unload the magazine. Qin Tian realizes he just got scammed out of his life savings by a system author who belongs in an asylum. The next morning, Yilin praises his breakfast cooking while asking if she can come see the scary panda. Qin Tian strictly tells her to stay in camp for her own safety, grabs his bow and heads out alone. Arriving at the cave with only one steel arrow, Qin Tian notches a test charcoal arrow, firing into the dark abyss to lure the giant beast out. Qin Tian is out here wandering through the jungle like a lost Skyrim NPC, wondering where that giant panda disappeared to and if his Wild Animals Encyclopedia has any info for him. Right on cue, the red-eyed demon bear emerges from the bushes. His trusty system encyclopedia hits him with a wild historical fact. This absolute unit of a bear isn't your average zoo animal. It's a prehistoric relic straight out of the Miocene epoch from 8 million years ago. The system hits him with a random taming manual, claiming pandas were originally carnivores that turned into bamboo-munching couch potatoes, meaning if he feeds it enough bamboo for 2 months, it'll become a loyal pet. Qin Tian thinks about attacking its genitals as the book suggested, but decides that a classic arrow to the back is a much better idea. His arrow lands with a brutal crunch. Then he pulls the arrow back with the rope, sending the prehistoric beast into an absolute rage. Qin Tian immediately activates his cheetah agility skill. He lures the bear through the trees, shooting it from a safe distance. But after burning through his entire stamina bar, he decides to stop there for the day. On day 1, he lands 6 solid hits. On day 2, again he snipes it from a tree like a total FPS camper. On day 3, he pins it while it wanders. But on day 4, tracking the blood trail to a dark cave, Qin Tian wonders if the bear bleed to death. But it set a literal tactical ambush. The massive shadow looms over him from behind, forcing Qin Tian to pop his speed skill just to dodge a lethal strike. Qin Tian jumps back and fires another arrow. But this bear has officially leveled up its battle IQ. It swats the arrow out of the air and snaps the shaft right in its jaws. To make matters worse, a heavy rainstorm begins, leaving Qin Tian with only one single steel arrow left in his inventory. But just then, he spots a glowing sapphire poison dart frog chillin' on a leaf. According to the system, Its skin packs enough neurotoxin to completely shut down a creature's respiratory system, giving Chin Tian that ultimate villainous anime smirk. Remembering an old wild survival guide about poison arrows, he carefully scoops up the toxic little guy on an arrow. Realizing the storm is getting worse, he dashes back to camp where Yilin immediately tackles him with a desperate hug. Crying out about where he was all this time, Chin Tian can only chuckle, thinking the wild boar trauma turned his campus goddess into a super needy waifu. He gently pats her head, but Yilin instantly goes full tsundere, pouting that she wasn't scared at all, just worried about him. Noticing the bright blue frog, she asks if it's poisonous, comparing it to fancy toxic mushrooms, which prompts Chin Tian to explain his plan for the panda. The next morning, Chin Tian roasts the frog over open flames, cooking up forbidden potion ingredients. The moisture boils on the frog's skin, turning into dark and nasty-smelling pure concentrated poison. He carefully dips his arrowheads into the sludge, ensuring maximum lethal damage without instantly killing the bear. Yilin hands over a fresh pile of tightly rolled grass balls, completely confused about his plan. But Chin Tian ensures her that he has a good plan. Reaching the panda's cave with 0 tracks going outside, Chin Tian confirms the target is trapped in. Chin Tian lights those grass balls on fire and chucks them straight into the cavern like smoke grenades. Smoke billows into the cave, forcing the suffocating, blood-drained panda to come barging out in a complete panic. With the boss heavily weakened from inhaling lots of carbon dioxide, Chin Tian pops his cheetah agility once again to create distance. The exhausted monster stomps through the bushes, completely out of breath. Chin Tian smoothly draws back his bamboo bow, lining up his poison-laced arrow for the ultimate finishing blow. Chin Tian looses his arrow straight into the panda's rear end, even though it's just a stone arrowhead. But this angry prehistoric unit turns around and charges at him anyway. Chin Tian lands another hit, watching the bear start to wobble as muscle paralysis sets in. The bear snarls right in his face, making Chin Tian regret not using his last steel arrow. Just as the bear was dangerously close, the giant beast faceplants straight into the dirt with a loud thud. It was literally fighting on sheer anger alone before the poison took over. 1 hour later, the bear is shivering on the grass. 2 hours later, it manages to sit up. And by 3 hours, it wobbles back onto its feet like a drunk guy leaving a club at 3 in the morning. Seeing the bear barely able to walk, Chin Tian knows the toxin dosage was perfect, strong enough to restrain the beast without killing it. The next morning, Chin Tian grabs fresh fish and bamboo sprouts, while reassuring Yilin that today's mission is a guaranteed success. Arriving at the cave, he finds the massive panda completely passed out right at the entrance. Laughing at how dumb ancient animals were, Chin Tian shoves bamboo sprouts inside a fresh fish and smacks it straight at the bear's butt. The panda wakes up growling, but the lingering paralysis keeps it from attacking. Smelling the fish, it immediately chomps down, devouring the bamboo-filled meal in seconds. Realizing this giant tank is as simple-minded as it is strong, Chin Tian dangles another fish in front of its drooling face. The starving bear scarfs down the second fish like a competitive eater. Chin Tian strokes his chin, deciding on the most epic, magnificent name for this terrifying prehistoric apex predator, and settles on Fatty. Later that night back at camp, while sipping warm soup over the fire, Chin Tian calculates it'll take about 2 months to fully tame Fatty. Yilin hears the name Fatty and instantly looks at him like he's an absolute idiot. Disgusted by his atrocious naming skills, she loses her appetite and pushes her bowl away. Being as dense as a literal brick, Chin Tian asks if it's that time of the month, which immediately causes Yilin to explode in anger, screaming at him to stop pissing her off. Internally panicking, Chin Tian realizes the lack of sanitary supplies on a deserted island is a genuine survival hazard. Yilin shyly admits her cramps just started from her irregular schedule, looking completely defeated, until Chin Tian casually drops that they're going to manufacture paper tomorrow. Yilin's eyes light up with hope, even as Chin Tian reflects on the ancient Han Dynasty paper-making process, which involved soaking plants, boiling fibers, and endless manual labor. The next morning, Yilin wakes up to an absolute biohazard smell. She spots Chin Tian holding a pot of literal urine, looking at him with utter disgust and accusing him of having a nasty hobby. Chin Tian yells that he's using it for science, ordering her to weave a bamboo frame while he sets up the plumbing. This absolute mad scientist sets up a full-scale chemical refinery on a deserted island. Using urine for ammonia and roasted clamshell powder for potassium carbonate, he creates a DIY distillation rig with clay pipes. When Yilin stares in utter shock at his chemistry genius, Chin Tian yells at her to stop spacing out and pour the water. Through a series of insane chemical reactions combining salt, lime water, and sodium carbonate, he successfully creates sodium hydroxide solution to break down plant cellulose for paper pulp. Exhausted from the multi-step chemistry exam, Yilin complains that this is way too much work, wishing they had electricity for simple brine electrolysis. Qin Tian sarcastically suggests tying a knife to a bamboo stick in a thunderstorm to catch lightning. To which Yilin bluntly tells him he can go get struck by lightning all by himself. After gathering a pile of weeds, Qin Tian boils them in his DIY chemical soup for hours to dissolve the plant gunk. Before washing the pulp in the river, he pours the pure fiber solution over their bamboo screen mold, smoothing out thin layers to dry in the sun, earning a sweet 1,000 system points for unlocking the paper age. The finished paper is a bit yellowish, but super elastic, prompting Qin Tian to proudly flex that they finally don't have to wipe with tree twigs anymore. Yilin instantly gags since they are literally eating dinner right now. She calls him gross, but still praises his big brain survival skills, while Qin Tian plays it humble like a true anime protagonist. 3 days later, he hikes over to check on Fatty. Fatty wakes up growling like a threatened raid boss, until he spots the fresh fish in Qin Tian's hands. The terrifying prehistoric beast drops its edge instantly, sitting down like a polite golden retriever to devour its meal, while Qin Tian whacks it over the head with another fish just to show who's boss. Heading down to the lake, Qin Tian hunts for wild ginseng, pulling up 3-year-old rootstocks to cook up a restorative potion. Back at camp, Yilin is curled up in absolute agony from brutal period cramps. Qin Tian asks, does it usually hurt this bad? While cooking up a warm pot of ginger ginseng tea, she answers in agony that it doesn't. Qin Tian asks what she used to do to reduce it. Yilin lists, hugging a warm pocket or sugar tea. Then our Prince Charming surprises her with a flask and ginger tea. Handing her a steaming cup, he lies through his teeth about just stumbling upon the ginger, making Yilin blush as the warm tea instantly cures her cramps. Qin Tian then reveals his galaxy brain animal taming strategy. By starving Fatty and slowly adjusting his diet over a month to 90% bamboo sprouts and 10% fish, he completely broke the wild beast spirit, even hugging Fatty from behind and calling himself Fatty's daddy. A month and a half later, Qin Tian hands Fatty a fresh bamboo sprout early in the morning. Fatty hesitates for a second, then happily munches down the bamboo like a true vegetarian, proving Qin Tian successfully brainwashed a prehistoric carnivore in record time. The system rewards his master tamer skills by unlocking pet mode. This feature links Fatty directly to Qin Tian's inventory, displaying his health status while mathematically preventing the pet from ever attacking its owner. After slapping Fatty on the back to officially claim ownership of Fatty, at nighttime Yilin asks if she can see Fatty now. Qin Tian agrees to take her tomorrow. Qin Tian brings Yilin to meet her new, oversized, fluffy bodyguard. Yilin timidly offers bamboo, and within a week, Fatty becomes so gentle she literally uses the giant demon bear as a fluffy pillow while he happily walks. Time to pack up camp. Yilin notices Qin Tian wove live fish into a hanging mesh trap to keep them fresh on the journey. Slapping Fatty's ass to load him up like a prehistoric pack mule, they throw away extra baskets, grabbing a flat stone slab for future cooking. Yilin looks back at their leaf tent with a nostalgic sigh, sad to leave their very first home behind. Qin Tian comforts her as they march into the forest. Right off the bat, the system drops a massive 3,000-point payout just for discovering a new shelter location. Stargazing by the campfire under the Milky Way with Fatty sleeping nearby, Yilin points out that none of them have to stand guard because now that their bear is guarding them, and they can both sleep together. Qin Tian catches the word together and start teasing her. Asks if she has feelings for him. Yilin gets flustered. As her internal monologue goes wild about not being ready, Qin Tian keeps getting closer, saying they can't sleep together cause they aren't couples. Yilin's heart jumps into hyperdrive. Qin Tian ruins the whole romantic mood by laughing out loud, claiming it was just a joke. Yilin gets super annoyed at his dense behavior, while Qin Tian asks her to the next task like nothing happened. The next day, while Yilin works on pottery, Qin Tian rides on Fatty's back like a medieval knight to explore the river, realizing the shallow waters won't cut it for fish farming. Moving to the deeper upper course, Qin Tian gets straight to work. On day 3, he uses Fatty as a literal logging truck to haul bamboo, bonking the bear over the head to remind him no snacks until the work is done. By day 4, he heats bamboo over open flames to bend it into elastic walls, building a cabin-like structure while completely shutting down Yilin's idea to coat the walls in mud because it will melt away in rain. 1 week later, these two officially complete a bamboo kitchen fully equipped with tables, shelves, and chairs. The system rains down rewards, giving him 500 points for a ladder and 500 for a bed, which he already used to buy an illustrated plant encyclopedia. With survival secured, the duo and Fatty go splashing in the river for a well-deserved vacation day. While playing in the river with Fatty, Yilin steps on a crystal-clear rock underwater, gasping if she just discovered valuable jade. Qin Tian instantly destroys her dreams, bluntly calling her stupid and explaining it's just plain old silica used to make glass. Pointing when it's this small it's just called rock. Pushing deeper into the upper river forest, Qin Tian discovers a massive 100-year-old pumpkin tree. The system reveals its berries have natural soap properties, prompting Yilin to mention her hair is getting super dry from using basic lard soap. Seeing a chance to upgrade her hair care routine, Qin Tian offers to make her custom shampoo. Yilin timidly tells him not to climb the dangerous prickly tree, but Qin Tian ignores her completely, flexing his parkour skills to leap 3 meters straight into the branches. Yilin blushes in total embarrassment as he grins down from above. Tying a safety rope around his waist, he chops down heavy bundles of pumpkin fruit, filling Yilin's basket to the brim. Qin Tian points it's more than enough to make a shampoo for her. Yilin pouts with a red face, stammering that he can do whatever he wants. Secretly thrilled about her new custom shampoo, Qin Tian says okay, forget it then. Yilin goes running to him, saying he shouldn't stop since he already put his mind in it. Next up, they march toward a massive field of sugar cane. While Yilin marvels at the dense stalks, Qin Tian's tactical brain spots a massive red flag. This field looks artificially planted by human hands. Before he can stop her, Yilin reaches out to touch a sugarcane leaf. She slashes her hand on a razor-sharp leaf. Qin Tian sighs, scolding her for touching wild plants bare-handed. Before chopping down the purple sugar cane to inspect it, Yilin makes a disgusted face after tasting the sweet and sour stalk. Qin Tian smiles, saying the sugar cane are already overripe. Realizing he can brew black sugar tea using these, Qin Tian and Yilin dry and peel the nutrient-packed pumpkin fruits, cooking up a batch of soft, delicious porridge that Yilin devours like a 5-star gourmet meal. They plan out their next survival upgrade, deciding to collect coconut palms tomorrow to complete their custom shampoo formula. The next morning, Qin Tian spends hours pressing bamboo tubes to squeeze out fresh juice. When Yilin comes marching back to camp with a basket full of wild mushrooms, looking proud of herself doing the gathering quest, Qin Tian gets happy and pets her. But when Qin Tian scans the basket with his system, he nearly has a heart attack. The basket is packed with destroying angel mushrooms that cause organ failure, fly agaric fungi that cause psychosis, and literal hallucinogenic magic mushrooms. Realizing his waifu almost cooked him a death meal, Qin Tian picks out the one single edible chanterelle mushroom, leaving Yilin disappointed while he sends her to pick peppermint leaves for DIY toothpaste. Turning into a full-time chemistry professor, Qin Tian breaks down the formulas on an imaginary chalkboard, combining palm oil, pumpkin juice, and gingerol-packed ginger water to prevent hair loss. He then steams peppermint leaves through clay pipes to condense pure menthol oil, mixing the palm oil and pumpkin oil in a perfect 5-to-5 ratio. The system rains down 800 points for shampoo and 500 points for toothpaste. When the work was finally done, Yilin stayed disappointed that she can't wash her hairs today. Later that night, Qin Tian wakes up in a cold sweat to eerie giggling in the dark. Turning around, he sees Yilin sleep talking about her own silky hairs in the dark, giggling like a madwoman over how soft her hair feels. Just as Qin Tian sighs in relief, massive thunder rumbles through the sky and a torrential downpour hits. Yilin wakes up from the sound. Suddenly, Fatty starts growling with crimson glowing eyes. Yilin points out that Fatty is acting different. She asks if Fatty is sick or something. Qin Tian pops open Fatty's status window, only to see a terrifying warning map. A massive stampede of red-eyed wild boars is charging straight toward their camp. Grabbing his bow, Qin Tian tells Yilin to hide inside while he prepares for the nightmare. The red-eyed boars come stomping through the mud, but Fatty charges straight into the fray like a berserker, slapping boars left and right with heavy bare paws. Qin Tian panics, realizing his oversized fluffy tank is about to get surrounded. While the boars focus entirely on Fatty, the giant bear chomps straight into a boar's neck like a savage apex predator, leaping across the battlefield. Sneaking into position, Qin Tian looses a poisoned arrow straight into a boar's neck. Watching the beast tremble and collapse, he realizes the frog poison is still potent. Realizing he only has 4 arrows left in his quiver, Qin Tian draws back his bowstring, channeling his inner Hawkeye to land a rapid-fire shots that drops 3 boars. But just as he catches his breath, a massive red-eyed boar in the bushes turns its head, locking its glowing crimson eyes directly on Qin Tian. Realizing those two red-eyed boars spotted him, Chin Tian doesn't panic. He decides to play aggro tank and lure them away from camp. Sprinting through the pouring rain, he leads the wild beasts deep into the forest, pulling off a masterclass kiting play. Escaping up a tall tree, Chin Tian notes that the heavy rain masked his scent. With the threat pulled away from camp, he dashes back to help Fatty, finding his oversized panda bear aggressively growling at the remaining boars. Chin Tian steps in, gently patting Fatty's head to calm his bloodlust. Sitting over the slain boars, next morning Yilin worries that Fatty's battle wounds might fester. But Chin Tian reassures her that wild animals are tough, dragging the massive boar carcasses back to their bamboo cabin. Chin Tian notes that boars always seem to rampage during heavy rainstorms, but Yilin points that it rained on the days when he was training Fatty, but there was no such boar attacks. Chin Tian agrees and says he is confused too, knowing it'll take all day to skin the boars. Chin Tian decides to hike into the bamboo forest to gather fresh sprouts as a reward for Fatty, finding only a tiny bundle that wouldn't even count as a light snack for a giant bear. Chin Tian pushes deeper into the unnaturally quiet jungle. He notices that it's too quiet today. Suddenly, he spots deep marks on the ground like there was a road roller. He gets a bad feeling and tries leaving, but ground starts shaking beneath his boots with a terrifying vibration. Chin Tian turns around, and his jaw drops in total horror as a legendary prehistoric monster emerges. A massive 12-meter-long, 1-ton titanoboa straight out of the Paleocene epoch, extinct for 58 million years, comes slithering through the trees. Chin Tian panics, wondering if dinosaurs are going to spawn next. When his system opens the animal taming guide, the Unhinged manual claims running is impossible, recommending 4 insane steps. Step 1, fight head-on. Step 2, jump inside its open mouth. Step 3, enter its guts. Step 4, cut your way out through its stomach. Chin Tian screams in utter disbelief at this absolute suicide advice, with the giant titanoboa flicking its scent-tracking tongue. Chin Tian sprints up a small hill and slides down the dirt slope, successfully buying a few seconds of breathing room. Realizing he used all his poison arrows last night, Chin Tian rejects the system's dumb mouth-jumping plan, comparing it to diving into a pool of lava. As the snake sniffs his location, Chin Tian draws his trusty hunting dagger, sprinting along the snake's massive body to stab it right where the heart should be. The snake screeches in pain, but his dagger was too short to pierce the thick scales. As the giant serpent thumps onto the ground, Chin Tian realizes a hilarious game exploit. If he sits directly on the snake's back, it can't smell or see him. For a whole hour, Chin Tian hitches a free ride on the slithering giant, until he gets hit with an absolute biohazard stink. Realizing they just entered a wild boar manure territory, the titanoboa suddenly accelerates, locking its sights directly on a wild boar running through the clearing. While the giant titanoboa is busy swallowing a wild boar whole like a massive Thanksgiving turkey, Chin Tian hops off its tail and dashes away. Realizing this giant snake was the real reason the boars went on a rampage in the first place. Running on pure adrenaline, Chin Tian slips and faceplants straight into the mud. Exhausted, bruised, and trembling from total fatigue, desperate to survive the night, he opens his system gacha wheel, praying to land a stamina buff like a horse's endurance. But the system gacha completely scammed him, awarding him the ability to own a second pet. Chin Tian facepalms in utter despair, wondering what he is even supposed to do with that right now, when a herd of wild boars comes marching through the bamboo trees. Praying they pass by, a lone boar pops out right in front of his face. Chin Tian tries screaming at it like a madman to scare it off, but the boar charges straight at him, sprinting for his life. His overused knee throbs with intense pain, forcing him to leap straight into a deep pit he remembered nearby. Diving headfirst into the pit, he lands with a nasty splash. Realizing the hole is filled with literal wild boar manure, the boars wander over, but because the foul stench completely masks his human scent, they fail to notice him and decide to take a nap right outside the pit. Trapped chest deep in steaming manure, Chin Tian suffers in absolute agony. The microbial heat decomposition and trapped carbon dioxide turn the pit into a literal sauna, making his limbs go completely numb, forcing himself to stay awake so he doesn't pass out and drown in poop. Suddenly, a torch flame flickers through the dark woods. Chin Tian thinks he is hallucinating, until he sees a legendary sight. Yilin riding into the dark forest on top of Fatty like a battle princess, wielding a blazing torch and an axe. Spotting the boars and seeing Chin Tian trapped in the pit, she screams his name. Fatty lets out a terrifying roar, scaring the sleeping boars away instantly. Chin Tian thinks he is dreaming, warning Yilin not to come close because he is covered in manure. But as he tries to stand, his numb legs give out, causing him to slip straight into Yilin's arms. Yilin catches him gently, reassuring him that they need to get back to safety. Mounting fatties back together, Qin Tian holds onto Yilin's waist, blushing furiously as he notices the hem of her white dress is torn. Realizing she ripped her own clothes to fashion bandages for his wounds, Qin Tian stares at her in awe, completely falling for this fierce, caring side of his campus goddess. After walking for 2 straight hours to escape that nightmare bamboo forest, Qin Tian and Yilin finally reach the river and collapse into the refreshing water. While Yilin washes up and tells him to keep his eyes to himself, the sheer fatigue hits them like a freight train, forcing them to stumble back to the cave camp. Yilin passes out on her bamboo bed immediately, so Qin Tian heads to the kitchen to give her privacy while searching for a quick meal. Inside the kitchen, Qin Tian spots the butchered boar, wondering if there was a wild animal here. He realizes how Yilin managed to craft that rescue torch last night. She literally cut open the boar's stomach with her own hands and pressed out raw pork fat oil like a hardened survivalist. But just as he is admiring her insane bravery, his knees completely give out from overusing cheetah agility, leaving him writhing in pain on the bamboo chair. The system pops up to award him a massive 7,000 points payout for escaping the Titanoboa. Dragging himself up, Qin Tian brings a warm bowl of porridge to Yilin, only to find her fast asleep. Staring at her peaceful face, Qin Tian reflects on how much he misjudged his campus waifu. A supposedly frail girl ventured into a pitch-black jungle infested with giant snakes just to save his life. That evening over dinner, Qin Tian casually asks if she followed the tracks on the ground to find him. When Yilin smiles and says yes, Qin Tian drops a massive truth bomb. Those were actually the giant slithering tracks of the Titanoboa. Yilin nearly chokes on her porridge, screaming in utter terror about how they will get food for Fatty. But Qin Tian reassures her that as long as they stay near the jungle entrance, the mega snake won't bother them. He warmly thanks her for saving him, making Yilin blush before giving him a gorgeous, bright smile. The next afternoon, Qin Tian begins the tedious task of butchering all 4 wild boars before the meat spoils in the heat. It takes him half a day just to cut up 1 boar, with Yilin playfully teasing him about his messy cuts. After 3 full days of grueling labor, they hang the meat strips outside to smoke dry over the fire. The next day, Yilin to suddenly scream in total shock that every single piece of meat has vanished into thin air. Qin Tian rushes over, completely baffled. Checking the ground, there are 0 footprints, and even Fatty sleeping nearby didn't hear a single thing. Realizing a stealthy phantom thief is on the loose, Qin Tian decides to sleep during the day and keep watch all night. When he wakes up after 12 hours, Yilin brings him fresh peppermint tea to keep him sharp, while Qin Tian ponders what kind of terrifying stealth predator could steal a half-year supply of food without making a sound. As the sun rises the next morning, Qin Tian yawns, thinking the thief won't strike twice in a row, when suddenly a massive shadow swoops down from the sky with a loud flap. Looking up, Qin Tian spots a legendary black eagle, a top 10 global apex raptor with a massive 2-meter wingspan that swoops down at 300 kilometers per hour to crush prey heads with its sharp talons. The giant bird boldly snatches their smoked meat straight off the bamboo drying rack. The system immediately hits him with taming instructions, explaining that to tame an arrogant black eagle, you either raise an eaglet or pull an all-nighter staring contest until its wildness breaks. Qin Tian stands in utter disbelief, thinking about what insane prehistoric creature this cursed island is going to spawn next. Why his life has to be this ridiculously tough. Instead of removing the empty racks, Qin Tian decides to leave them outside as bait to set up a classic snare trap using a bent bamboo pole and a tripwire. Yilin deeply doubts if a simple deer trap can catch an apex predator bird, so Qin Tian decides to test the trigger mechanism first. But when he presses the wooden switch, the spring-loaded bamboo stick snaps back and whacks him straight across the face like a cartoon slapstick gag. Rubbing his sore jaw, Qin Tian calls Fatty over to slam the trigger with his heavy bare paws. Fatty slams it so hard the entire bamboo frame cracks into pieces. But hey, at least the mechanism actually works. Later that afternoon, as Yilin yawns and asks if the bird will actually return, a piercing screech echoes from the clouds. The massive black eagle swoops down toward the fish bait, stepping right into the loop. The bamboo spring snaps upward with a loud yank, trapping the giant bird by its leg. Qin Tian stops Yilin from rushing over, wisely waiting for the raptor to exhaust itself so they don't get shredded by those razor-sharp talons. Once the bird collapses from sheer fatigue, they approach to inspect it up close. Yilin marvels that the eagle is half her size. Qin Tian sarcastically asks her if it ever crossed her mind that she might just be small. Yilin fires back that he isn't tall either. Qin Tian noticing a weird trend. Every animal on this cursed island, from swamp eels to pandas and giant snakes, is absurdly oversized. When Yilin asks why they are called black eagles, is it because they are black? Qin Tian answers saying some are brown too, but most are darker. Then Qin Tian gets that evil troll face smirk. Yilin gets that he must have gotten a name for the eagle. He officially names the proud avian beast Blackie. The eagle screeches in sheer humiliation while Yilin mocks his atrocious naming skills. Qin Tian tries to activate his system pet feature, but the system denies him, stating he must manually tame the beast first by breaking its wild spirit. Realizing he has to keep the eagle awake continuously, Qin Tian and Yilin agree to work in shifts, starting a brutal 1-week sleep deprivation war. Yilin guards during the afternoon, poking Blackie with a long bamboo stick whenever it tries to take a run away. In the second-day evening, Qin Tian is hallucinating from lack of sleep, earning 200 points for crafting a DIY toothbrush while showing it off to a completely speechless eagle. On day 3, whenever Blackie tries to snooze, Fatty comes barging in with a deafening roar to shock the bird awake. Meanwhile, Yilin crafts boar hide clothes, and Qin Tian boils down bones for gelatin, even bonking Fatty on the head when the lazy panda falls asleep on night watch. By the morning of day 5, Blackie is rocking red-eye bags, completely broken and ready to surrender. Qin Tian approaches with bamboo sticks, prompting the proud raptor to bow its head in total submission. Activating his system hand rune, glowing blue energy surges, rewarding Qin Tian with a massive 5,000 points payout for taming the black eagle. But as the status window displays hungry and tired, Qin Tian suddenly experiences a mind-blowing system side effect. Sharing a real-time optical link through Blackie's eyes, seeing the entire island from high above in the sky, and a young chick. Yilin is happy about that. They succeeded sooner than she thought. Qin Tian says it's because of Blackie's eaglet. Yilin asks how did he know about the eaglet. Qin Tian says it's a guess because they mate in summer or spring. She gets amused on the thought of having 2 eagles. Right on cue, feathered menace, Blackie lands smoothly on Qin Tian's arm like a total flex. Yilin tries to get some pet action, but Blackie instantly screeches in her face, giving her the ultimate cold shoulder. Yilin is straight up offended, but Qin Tian realizes the harsh truth. The system pet bind only recognizes him as the master. Yilin brings out fresh fishes for Blackie, pointing out that this majestic apex predator walks on land like a goofy, oversized chicken. The next morning, the rescue squad hits the trail early. Qin Tian uses his pet telepathy to figure out the eaglet's exact situation. The little guy fell straight out of its nest into a tight rock crevice, and if it rained, hypothermia is about to claim the poor creature. They trek deep into the wilderness, setting up camp as night falls. Qin Tian sprinkles calcium oxide around the perimeter, like to keep the mutant bugs away. While enjoying a cozy campfire meal, Qin Tian pulls out his inner math nerd, calculating that they have walked at least 20 kilometers into an endless sea of green. He starts overthinking like every overprepared survivalist, wondering how an island this massive and insanely rich in natural resources somehow avoided human civilization. Naturally, he starts talking about deadly predators, scaring Yilin half to death right before bedtime. Right on cue, the forest proves him right. Fatty suddenly drops his goofy demeanor, letting out a low, menacing growl. Glowing blue eyes light up the dark bushes like a horror movie jumpscare. A full pack of giant gray wolves emerges to crash their cozy camp. Qin Tian instantly breaks down the battle like a hardcore gamer. Fatty is their level 100 frontline tank. Qin Tian is the ranged archer. Yilin is the clueless support assistant, and Blackie is completely useless because raptors have 0 night vision. Qin Tian hands Yilin a makeshift torch and orders her to bring the heat. Yilin yeets a burning branch straight at the pack, confusing the beasts with pure fire. Qin Tian gives the command, and Fatty goes full berserker mode, roaring like thunder, completely obliterating the pack's morale. After surviving the midnight wolf raid, morning arrives, and Blackie guides them to a massive cliff face where the nest is located. The incline is way too steep for Yilin, so Qin Tian tells her to stay low and chill with Fatty while he does his best Spider-Man impression. He scales the bare rock face solo, almost slipping off to meet his maker before catching himself by a single ledge. Reaching the summit, he gets a breathtaking view of the island and spots a giant dormant volcano on the horizon. His inner engineer instantly starts drooling, knowing that volcanic zones mean unlimited mineral ores for his future metal upgrades. Blackie hits him out of dreams, reminding him that they are here on a rescue mission, not a geology field trip. The eaglet is stuck way down in a narrow rock crack. Without fancy climbing gear, Chin Tian uses his pet bind link to pull off an insane trick, instructing Blackie to lower a rope so the baby bird can clamp down with its beak. He pulls the rope up, successfully fishing out a surprisingly massive baby eagle. Tucking the featherball safely into his shirt, Chin Tian climbs back down the treacherous cliff, sweating bullets and swearing to never rock climb again. But as soon as his boots touch the ground, he looks around and realizes the horror. Yilin and Fatty have completely vanished into thin air. Before Chin Tian can fully panic, he spots a handwritten note on the dirt revealing Yilin just went grocery shopping in the woods. Right on cue, Yilin comes riding back on Fatty like a noble knight on a fluffy mount, bringing back a bamboo container of fresh supplies. But before they can even celebrate, a thunderous engine roars tears through the clouds. A literal propeller airplane comes swooping overhead, sputtering smoke and losing altitude fast. Realizing a plane crash just about to happen on their island, Chin Tian and Yilin sprint toward the impact zone, only to get cock-blocked by a massive, impassable cliff. Chin Tian pulls out his inner strategic general, drawing a dirty map in the mud to weigh their options. Heading back to base for supplies would waste too much time, so Chin Tian makes the executive decision to solo rush the crash site, while Yilin and Fatty head back to the mansion with the newly rescued baby eagle. Around the campfire that night, Yilin gets overly attached to the baby bird, trying to name it Love, which Chin Tian roasts without hesitation. The next morning, Yilin hands him a bamboo bottle of pine resin for emergency fire starting before they split up. Activated and ready, Chin Tian pops his cheetah agility skill like an endless stamina potion, speed running south toward the crash site every single hour. By noon, the terrain turns into a damp, squishy mess. Chin Tian taps into Blackie's optical link to get a drone view of the path ahead, only to spot a massive, infinite swamp blocking his way. With no path around it, he trudges straight into the murky bog, instantly getting swarmed by bloodthirsty mosquitoes. To make matters worse, a green venomous viper drops from the trees like a surprise jump scare, lunging straight for his neck. Chin Tian reacts with light-speed reflexes, whacking the snake mid-air with his bamboo can before Blackie swoops in like an aerial hitman, snatching the viper. Thinking he is finally in the clear, Chin Tian pops his speed buff to make up for lost time, only to instantly step into a deep pool of quicksand. He starts sinking like a stone, but instead of panicking like a minor character, he uses his big brain physics knowledge. Knowing quicksand is a non-Newtonian fluid, he commands Blackie to drop a bunch of heavy tree branches into the mud. Chin Tian spreads his body weight over the timber, slowly crawling his way out of the death trap over the course of an hour. Refusing to be defeated, he uses his survival crafting skills to build makeshift mudskis out of thick branches and vines, gliding across the quicksand like an Olympic skier. Meanwhile, at the actual crash site, the damaged propeller plane lies steaming in the swamp. The pilot groans as she sits up in the cockpit, revealing herself as a drop-dead gorgeous blonde aviator sporting a leather jacket and goggles. Pulling herself out of the wreckage, she wipes the dirt off her face and scans the treacherous bog, noting that this nightmare terrain looks dangerously similar to her previous survival expedition in South America. Standing beside her broken propeller plane, the blonde pilot calls out into the silent wilderness, only to get complete radio silence as the sun starts dipping below the horizon. Giving up hope for the day, she climbs back inside her cockpit for shelter, but suddenly hears something rustling through the swamp bushes. High above the treetops, Blackie spots the white fuselage and calls down to Chin Tian, guiding our survival Jigachad directly to the crash site. Chin Tian sprints to the vintage aircraft, finding no blood in sight, but notices something insanely weird. The plane looks completely brand new, yet it is an ancient vintage model with zero modern radio technology. Before he can ponder this anomaly, a desperate scream shatters the air. The blonde pilot comes sprinting out of the murky swamp like an Olympic runner, shouting that a horde of giant crocodiles is hot on her heels. The system instantly scans the threat. 4-meter-long, 1-ton swamp crocodiles capable of ripping human limbs off in seconds. Knowing fighting 1-ton reptiles on foot is a one-way ticket to the afterlife, Chin Tian leans out of the cockpit, grabs the pilot's hand, and pulls her up with raw strength. The blonde aviator tumbles straight into the cockpit, landing directly on top of Chin Tian in the most classic accidental anime romance cliché ever. Flustered out of her mind, she accidentally whacks him in the jaw before realizing he just saved her life. But the romantic tension instantly evaporates as the massive crocodiles surround the plane, violently ramming the metal body. Chin Tian pulls out his bow and fires a stone arrow, but it literally bounces off the croc's thick armor like a harmless pebble. Aiming for the eyes fails miserably because the monsters keep thrashing around, only making them angrier. Realizing the plane is about to capsize, Chin Tian opens his wilderness system menu, flexing a massive hoard of 12,700 banked points. Just as he searches for an archery buff, the pilot pulls out a bottle of high-proof liquor and a lighter, planning to Molotov the beasts. Chin Tian instantly stops her, screaming inside because wasting pure alcohol in a wilderness survival scenario is a cardinal sin. He takes her lighter and spends his system points to buy an aiming assistance skill. Golden energy surges through his body as the system reconstructs his physical specs, overlaying a literal video game auto-aim HUD scope directly onto his retinas. With target hitboxes, wind speed, and bow tension calculated in real time, Chin Tian lights his resin arrows on fire and lets them fly. Splutch! Point-blank flaming headshots penetrate straight into the crocodile's eye sockets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 crocs get systematically sniped in seconds. Terrified by the explosive headshots, the surviving crocs retreat back into the murky depths. Ecstatic from surviving the raid, the pilot calls Chin Tian her hero. They introduce themselves. Chin Tian tells his name, while she introduces herself as Jessica Hathaway. Jessica asks where are they and if there are more people beside them. But Chin Tian cuts her saying, if she has a cell phone. She asks, do you mean a telephone? Saying we can't use telephone without telephone line. As they talk more, they notice a bizarre communication gap between them. Later that night, sitting safely on the plane cabin over a torch, Jessica hands him a can of preserved beef from her cargo. Chin Tian inspects the metal can, November 1928. He stares in utter disbelief, wondering if this food is almost a century old. Jessica casually munches on the beef like it is fresh from the grocery store, assuring him it tastes great. Taking a cautious bite, Chin Tian realizes it is surprisingly delicious. Stuffed and exhausted from the battle, Jessica yawns as the night sky fills with stars. Chin Tian decides they will camp atop the plane, staring up at the galaxy. Morning comes at the crash site, and Chin Tian wakes up to find Jessica already preparing to cook. Her backpack is a literal Doraemon 4D pocket, packed with high-tier survival gear. He hands over the fresh pork for soup. After a hearty meal, Chin Tian uses caveman-style dirt drawings and charades to invite her back to their main base camp. But just as they pack up, black soars overhead, making Jessica freak out thinking they are about to get dive-bombed by an apex raptor. Chin Tian flexes on her by calling Blackid down like a Disney princess, casually proving the oversized eagle is his personal pet. As they trek through the jungle, a dense, ominous fog rolls in out of nowhere, completely blinding Blackid's aerial view. They decide to take a breather, but Jessica suddenly passes out on the grass. Chin Tian feels a wave of dizziness hit him like a hangover, collapsing to the ground. But hitting the deck actually saves his life. He notices the air is cleaner near the soil, realizing this fog is actually lethal methane gas, which is lighter than oxygen and rises upward. To double-check his theory, Chin Tian uses his system aiming skill to yeet a lighter into the fog, triggering a mini-explosion like an action movie hero. With Jessica still unconscious, Chin Tian digs into her survival backpack, finding a medical kit, a storage battery, syringes, wires, and metal spoons. Turning into MacGyver, Chin Tian uses a bamboo tube, fresh water, and the battery to build a DIY electrolysis oxygen inhaler. He sticks the oxygen tube into Jessica's nose, pumping fresh O2 straight into her lungs until she snaps back to reality. Taking turns with the bamboo inhaler, they rush out of the toxic gas zone and make camp for the night. Meanwhile, back at the bamboo mansion, Yilin is fighting a losing war against local raccoons stealing her fish. She feeds the baby eagle, but grows increasingly anxious, staring at the sky because Chin Tian has been missing for 3 whole days. Suddenly, Blackus swoops down to announce the king's return. Chin Tian walks out of the forest, but Yilin's emotional reunion is instantly shattered when she spots a gorgeous blonde pilot trailing behind him. Chin Tian teases her for missing him. She refuses. Chin Tian awkwardly tries to introduce them, claiming there is a massive language barrier. Out of nowhere, Jessica greets Yilin in fluent, perfect speech. Chin Tian gets hit with the ultimate meme shock face, realizing Jessica was basically trolling him or letting him do all the charades for nothing. That night around the campfire, Jessica reveals she is a paleontologist searching for a mythical prehistoric island to study extinct species. While Yilin and Chin Tian realize she is not a rescue team, her flight path could help them build a raft to escape. However, Jessica is not worried at all. She looks at Fatty the demon panda with crazy scientist eyes, practically drooling at the thought of dissecting a living prehistoric bear. But the real mindfuck happens when they discuss the current era. Jessica casually mentions that finding giant pandas will be the biggest discovery of the 20th century. Yilin laughs and corrects her, saying it is the 21st century. Jessica looks at them like they are insane, insisting that the 21st century is 70 years away. Chin Tian stares blankly and says the year is 2027. But Jessica drops a massive plot twist bomb, swearing on her life that the current year is 1927. Chin Tian tries to wrap his big brain around the insane timeline glitch. Jessica departed Los Angeles in 1927 before getting swallowed by a storm, while Chin Tian and Yilin capsized in 2027. Chin Tian connects the dots, realizing the freak storm was a temporal wormhole like the Bermuda Triangle. This explains how prehistoric monsters from different eras got dropped onto the exact same island. But instead of having an existential crisis, Chin Tian shifts the party's focus back to immediate survival. Jessica brings up a massive biology fact. Titanoboas are cold-blooded apex predators that need scorching tropical heat, meaning they're skin chaps in cool environments. Yilin suddenly remembers that wild boars only go on berserk rampages when it rains. Connecting the dots, Chin Tian realizes the Titanoboa only leaves its hot lair to hunt in the bamboo forest during heavy rainstorms. As long as the sky is clear, the ultimate boss monster stays asleep. When it is time for sleep, she looks Yilin dead in the eye and asks if she and Chin Tian are a couple. When Yilin stammers in flustered embarrassment, Jessica seizes the opportunity, pulling Chin Tian close and declaring that she wants him as her boyfriend because he saved her like a true hero. Yilin turns into an instant Yandra staring daggers through Chin Tian's soul. Chin Tian panics, shouting that they should just be friends first. But Jessica lands a sneaky flying smooch right on his cheek anyway. Chin Tian retreats into Jessica's sleeping bag like a turtle hiding in its shell. To make matters crazier, Jessica stripped down to her underwear because her flight clothes are dirty, prompting Yilin to curse her Western liberalism. But she spots Chin Tian peeking from the sleeping bag and beats him down, calling him a pervert. The next morning, Yilin serves breakfast with eyes colder than an Antarctic blizzard. When Chin Tian left Jessica alone with Yilin, she concludes that Yilin probably likes Chin Tian and casually proposes a polygamy solution, offering Yilin the coveted title of first wife. Flustered beyond belief, Yilin sprints over to Chin Tian and aggressively screams that she is the first wife, leaving our clueless Jigachad completely confused. Once the harem drama settles down, Chin Tian lays out his two-part survival roadmap. Step 1. Fortify the base with defensive spiked fences. Raise captured boars for food security, and mine iron ore to forge nails. Step 2. Build a massive seaworthy vessel to escape the island. Jessica hands Yilin some fresh spare clothes from her cargo, leaving Chin Tian jealous that he did not get a drip upgrade, though he gets hyped over her metal axes and shovels. The next morning, Chin Tian rides Fatty into the woods while Blackie provides drone coverage, confirming the Titanoboa is absent. Chin Tian revisits the wild boar manure pit he hid in earlier. Inspecting the purplish dirt beneath the waste, he identifies rich deposits of saltpeter, the core ingredient for crafting potassium nitrate. Loading the refined dirt onto Fatty, Chin Tian returns to camp, where Yilin and Jessica proudly reveal a custom bathtub they built together. The next afternoon, Chin Tian kicks off the gunpowder speedrun. He mixes green with ash and saltpeter in a precise 1:8 ratio, filtering the solution over bamboo poles with boiling water to extract pure potassium nitrate. With the filtration complete, Chin Tian announces that they will have real gunpowder by tomorrow, completely shocking Yilin. Around the campfire that night, the gang discusses Jessica's rich childhood travels, leading to Chin Tian calling her family bougie, which leaves the 1920s pilot totally confused by 21st century slang. The next day, Chin Tian gets down to business, refining the potassium nitrate over a roaring fire. Yilin and Jessica help pour the sticky mixture through cloth filters as it cools down, leaving behind a pile of pure white, sparkling potassium nitrate crystals. Yilin complains that a whole day's work produced such a small amount, but Chin Tian points out they now have all three holy ingredients unlocked: 75% potassium nitrate, 10% sulfur, and 15% wood ash. Chin Tian carefully measures the black powder ratio, drops a match onto the sample, and crackle, a flash of fire sparks to life, confirming the gunpowder is an absolute success. Both girls jump for joy like anime schoolgirls. But Chin Tian knows raw powder is useless without a shell. He immediately upgrades into a bombsmith, packing dried bamboo tubes with dry soil, gunpowder, and a damp paper fuse. When the girls wonder why he crafts explosives like a seasoned terrorist, Chin Tian sweats nervously. Remembering his delinquent childhood days throwing firecrackers into public restrooms with his childhood buddies, thinking they were just silly pranks. When Yilin asks why is he smirking, Chin Tian saying nothing, just childhood memories. Time to test the firepower. Chin Tian walks up to a cliff wall, lights the fuse, and yeets the bamboo grenade. Boom! An explosive blast shatters the quiet valley, scaring off the local wildlife and earning Chin Tian a sweet 5,000 points payout from the system. Inspecting the crater, Chin Tian notes that black powder in a bamboo barrel is weak compared to modern military TNT, but it is more than enough to scare away giant predators. With his sulfur supply running low, he crafts 3 extra bombs for emergency-based defense. The trio first decided to make brick walls, but they give up on making brick walls due to lack of clay, switching to a heavy wooden and bamboo perimeter fence before monsoon season hits. As mid-June approaches, the sweltering summer heat turns the island into an oven. While working under the blazing sun, Chin Tian drinks shaded water, wishing he had a cold summer treat. Suddenly, his chemistry brain activates. Potassium nitrate causes an endothermic reaction, rapidly absorbing surrounding heat when dissolved in water. He places a small pot of water inside a larger bucket filled with potassium nitrate salt, watching the water instantly freeze into solid ice. He crushes fresh summer raspberries, pours the juice over the crushed ice, and creates high-tier gourmet shaved ice. When Yilin and Jessica return from foraging, Yilin proudly shows the grapes that she found. Jessica teases her in front of Chin Tian, saying she was so happy on the way, saying he is going to be happy too seeing the fresh grapes. Then Chin Tian says he also have a surprise for them too, and unveils his culinary masterpiece. The girls literally lose their minds, screaming in shock at real shaved ice in the middle of a prehistoric jungle. Yilin takes a bite and ascends to heaven, feeling like she is surfing on ocean waves. Jessica gets dangerously close to Chin Tian, calling him a literal magician, while Chin Tian blushes, explaining the chemical cooling process. Seeing Jessica flirt with him, he tries making excuse, asking Yilin if she wants a grape-flavored bowl next, but she totally ignores him while enjoying her ice treat. To streamline their ice-making setup, Yilin crafts multi-layered clay pots insulated with pigskin, creating a Russian nesting doll thermal barrier. Jessica crushes wild grapes into pulp with sugar to brew wine, while intentionally punching holes in secondary barrels for grape vinegar. But while they run the winery, Chin Tian is sitting on a bench carving wooden fan blades. Yilin innocently asks if he is inventing electricity for the fan, but he clarifies it is a steam-powered automatic fan. The girls look at him in pure confusion, so he explains the mechanics. Bamboo bearings, wooden blades, and boiling steam driving the power shaft. Yilin suggests adding a condensation chiller to recycle the water, and just like that, before summer hits peak heat, they invent an automated closed-loop steam turbine fan inside a stone cave. Bro is literally running Industrial Revolution air conditioning in the prehistoric era. When the brutal heatwave strikes, the gang lounges in the cave slurping strawberry fruit popsicles. Fatty has become a certified ice cream fan, roaring for refills every time Chin Tian brings out a fresh batch. Yilin checks on Blackie and her chick, but Chin Tian reminds her that these raptors make a higher body temperature than humans, making tropical heat just perfect for them. Suddenly, violent thunder cracks across the horizon as monsoon season arrives. Yilin worries because the palisade fences are unfinished, fearing another wild beast invasion. Chin Tian stays calm, reminding her they have Blackie, Fatty, and homemade pipe bombs. Right on cue, heavy ground shaking thuds echo from the dark jungle as a massive red-eyed wild boar horde charges through the rain. Jessica gets excited, because she wanted to see a boar rampage with her own eyes. Chin Tian climbs the fence and says he didn't expect such a heavy rainfall. While Jessica mentions it's good that Blackie's feathers are oiled and waterproof, Chin Tian snipes lead boars from the wooden fence with arrow. As the pack splits, he commands Fatty and Blackie to lock down the left flank. Blackie dives from the storm's sinking talons into boar hides, while Fatty dishes out thunderous panda heavyweight slaps that send 200-pound hogs flying. With boars still swarming the right perimeter, Yilin suddenly channels her inner action hero. She lights a bamboo explosive and lobs the grenade over the barricade. Boom! A blinding blast rips through the front line, scattering the survivor boars in panic. The team cleans up the stragglers, securing half a year worth of prime meat. Over the next half-month of non-stop rain, they pull all-nighters reinforcing the fences. Once safe indoors, Chin Tian cracks open the fermented wine barrels. The girls spot white foamy bubbles and scream that it molded, but Chin Tian laughs, explaining it is just carbon dioxide from healthy fermentation. He strains the red liquid and pours 2 tasting cups. Yi-Lin and Jessica take a big swig, and their faces instantly contort in pure sour agony. Chin Tian ducks for cover, explaining young wine always tastes like battery acid until it properly ages. To redeem himself, he sets up a bamboo distillation rig to extract clean spirit, while mixing grape vinegar, baking soda, brown sugar, and chilled water to whip up an island soda. He serves the fizzy drinks in bamboo cups, and both girls ascend into pure bliss. The chemical reaction creates sparkling grape soda pop, delivering modern luxury right in the middle of a Jurassic jungle. Over the following month, camp life reaches peak civilization. The squad constructs a separate storage room, a dedicated pottery studio, and even a shower room, neatly separating their cozy living quarters from the workshop grind. The system immediately showers Chin Tian with 2,000 upgrade points for turning this jungle base livable area. As autumn rolls in, Blackie's chick, Love, is already growing at lightning speed, responding to Yi-Lin's commands like a well-trained raptor. Meanwhile, Chin Tian struts around in a fresh jacket and durable leather backpack tailored by Yi-Lin when he showers her with praise. Yi-Lin gets adorably flustered, proving that even in the wild, Sundra anime logic never dies. But she gets disappointed realizing he said he loves the bag, not her. With the perimeter secure, Chin Tian launches a major scouting mission toward the distant crash site plains, leaving Jessica and Yi-Lin to hold down the base. Riding atop Fatty steering a 400-pound tank, he navigates past the Old Wolf territory with explosives on standby. When chilly autumn nights hit, his tent and sleeping bag keep him perfectly cozy. By the next morning, they arrive at the plains bordering the volcanic mountain. Dense, waist-high shrubs cover the fields, making Chin Tian deeply grateful he has long pants instead of shorts. Suddenly, Fatty stumbles, looking completely dizzy from a foul stench. Chin Tian realizes that rotten egg aroma is pure sulfur. Leaving Fatty in a safe zone, he hikes up to the crater and hits literal pay dirt, a massive sulfur mine. In volcanic terrain, hydrogen sulfide reacts with sulfur dioxide to form pure sulfur deposits. More sulfur means unlimited gunpowder, pipe bombs, and total island dominance. He spots a metallic or unlocks the system mineral encyclopedia and confirms it is galena and pyrite. Pyrite means glass crafting is within reach, but when he strikes the bedrock, his stone axe shatters into pieces. Realizing he needs iron tools for heavy mining, so he marks the coordinates for now. Right on cue, Blackie swoops down carrying a handwritten letter from Yi-Lin. Reading her sweet message, he feels good to have someone who cares about him. Then he goes to test the sulfuric acid pool with a rope, but the acid instantly starts melting the rope like butter, forcing him to abandon the liquid acid harvest. On day 8, riding Fatty loaded with heavy minerals, they wander off track and hit another massive swamp. Remembering his previous methane scare with Jessica, Chin Tian assesses the light fog and deems it safe. He sends Blackie for aerial recon, and it pings back a shocking alert. Multiple 2-legged animals ahead, leaving Fatty behind so the giant panda does not blow their stealth. Chin Tian activates his speed skill, blitzing through the trees at 110 kilometers per hour. Creeping near the fog, he spots an intense skirmish. A nimble, brown-haired girl wielding dual daggers is being swarmed by a squad of burly, axe and sword-wielding tribal barbarians wearing horned helmets. She pulls off blade swing and parry, spins over his head, and slashing him from behind and lands perfectly, showing her skills. But she is heavily outnumbered. Refusing to watch an execution, Chin Tian Speed crafts a smoke bomb behind a tree, mixing potassium nitrate, baking soda, and brown sugar in a 3:2:1 ratio, instantly bagging 3,000 system points. Aiming for a non-lethal save, Chin Tian snipes an arrow straight into a barbarian's leg. The raider drops, creating a breakout window for the girl. As the rest give chase, Chin Tian pins them down with rapid arrow fire against their shields. That girl spots Chin Tian behind the tree trying to help her. Then he throws his bamboo smoke bomb backward. Boom! A massive pink smoke cloud erupts, leaving the barbarians coughing in blindness. While the pink smoke bomb blinds the battlefield, that girl just stands there in shock. Chin Tian screams at her to move her legs, snapping her back to reality as they sprint into the woods. Behind them, the horned Viking raiders shouts, running wildly through the mist. Chin Tian realizes these mountain men are built like brick walls. Even with his combat perks, engaging in a 10-on-1 brawl is pure suicide. Glancing back, he spots blood pouring down her leg from an ugly gash. Knowing she will get caught at this rate, he crouches down, demanding she hop on his back. Instead of jumping on, she starts speaking fluent foreign gibberish, draws her twin daggers, and boldly steps forward to solo the entire horde. Chin Tian has zero patience for anime martyrdom. He literally scoots in, hoists her over his shoulder, and activates Cheetah's agility to bolt. Carrying extra weight drains his stamina, giving him a strict 2-minute timer. But the universe decides things are not chaotic enough. Blackie drops an emergency warning of a colossal snake. Out slithers is the massive titanoboa. Turns out this rancid swamp was its primary habitat all along, only migrating to the bamboo forest during monsoon season. The Viking raiders take one look at the 60-foot monster and instantly, nope, out of the swamp. Chin Tian thinks the serpent will go toward the fleeing raiders, but the snake locks its demonic red eyes exclusively on him. He screams in pure terror as the beast snaps its jaws inches from his body. Suddenly, the girl leaps off his shoulder, defies basic physics, and scales the slippery scales. She drives a dagger directly into the snake's neck. The titanoboa thrashes in agony, launching her airborne and slamming her onto the mud. As the monster lunges to swallow her whole, Chin Tian dives across the dirt while dodging the snake, then shields her body with his own, and tanks a glancing tail whip. Before the beast can strike again, Chin Tian shoves a live explosive right into its face. Boom! The blast detonates in a flash of fire, dropping the titanoboa dazed onto the dirt. Grabbing the girl, Chin Tian books it out of the bog, clearing 300 meters onto open plains. But the prehistoric nightmare recovers and slithers right after them. Chin Tian starts panic praying to God, Buddha, and Allah all at once, diving into the tall grass. The girl tries to speak, but he instantly shushes her, explaining that snakes track heat signatures through facial pit organs, meaning the concussed beast cannot pinpoint them if they stay completely still. Then, Chin Tian issues the attack command. Right on time, Blackie dives from the sky, slicing talons across the titanoboa's face and drawing the beast away. With the crisis cleared, Chin Tian finds himself clutching the girl's chest, blushing furiously when she realizes how intimate they look. Clearing his throat, he leads her toward Fatty. The moment she spots the giant 400-pound panda, her instincts trigger and she draws her daggers to protect him. Chin Tian claps his hands, prompting Fatty to drop into an adorable bow. Seeing the giant bear grovel, the girl gets thoroughly confused and instantly prostrates into the dirt alongside the panda. Chin Tian sweats at her brain-rot logic, picking her up and placing her onto Fatty. Reaching a safe forest glade, they rest to treat her bleeding wounds. The girl tries rubbing sticks together to make fire, but Chin Tian casually flicks his metal lighter, igniting a roaring campfire in half a second. Her eyes sparkle in complete shock at this modern sorcery. But when she grabs a burning red stick to cauterize her own flesh like Rambo, Chin Tian slaps it away in sheer horror. Pulling out his medical disinfectant, he carefully cleans her wounded arm. Then he spots blood on her knees and points at that. She instantly lifts the skirt-like dress to show her deep thigh cut, which makes Chin Tian blush red while doing his best to remain a professional island medic. She winces in pain as the medicine burns, resting her feverish head against a tree. As night drops, Chin Tian pitches the tent and walks over to carry the shivering girl inside. But as his hand touches her shoulder, her eyes snap wide with glowing red battle bloodlust. In a split-second reflex, she draws her blade ready to slash. Chin Tian dodges her reflex strike by a millimeter, only for the girl to accidentally tackle him flat onto the grass. Realizing what she just did, she instantly drops face first into the dirt, profusely apologizing. Our boy sighs heavily. Inside the tent, the awkward silence is broken by a thunderous growl from her stomach. Mortified, she literally starts punching her own gut to force it to shut up. Chin Tian panics, stopping her before she throws up whatever little food she had, and hands her a strip of beef jerky. Instead of just eating it like a normal human, she bows to the floor, accepting the meat. She even refuses the cozy sleeping bag, choosing to sleep sitting up in her cloak. On sunrise, loud screeching echoes through the trees. We see the girl with daggers drawn to slay Blackie. Chin Tian screams for her to chill out, quickly explaining that this feathered friend was the one who stalled the titanoboa so they could escape. Hand gestures and wild charades fail to bridge the language barrier, so Chin Tian packs up camp and rides Fatty back home. The moment they arrive, Jessica and Yilin rush over. Seeing Chin Tian totally unharmed, Jessica instantly reverts to her sassy self, boldly asking if this feral kid is his new type since she clearly looks underage. Before Chin Tian can even defend his honor, the girl taps her arm and speaks. To everyone's utter shock, Jessica casually responds to the girl in her language. Turns out Jessica is a walking encyclopedia. She reveals the girl is named Hanik from the Rada tribe. Back in August 1939, right before World War II kicked off, an entire 50-person desert tribe vanished from Yemen near a British post, leaving behind empty tents and all their worldly belongings. Hanik confirms they mysteriously washed up on this island 3 years ago, but paradise vanished when a brutal raider fleet landed with triple their numbers. The invaders enslaved the majority of the tribe, forcing survivors like Hanik into hiding. Chin Tian breaks into a cold sweat. Fighting heavily equipped raiders on open ground is pure suicide. Yilin suggests allied cooperation, while Jessica explains Hanik's dire situation. Hanik only entered the deadly swamp because her tribe was starving. The toxic fog creates a natural island divide, only lifting for 3 days every seasonal transition. That means they have a solid 3-month buffer before winter clears the mist. Even better, Hanik genuinely believes Chin Tian is an almighty shaman. Between blowing up a prehistoric serpent, casting holy disinfectant on her cuts, and creating fire from a metallic lighter, she thinks he is literally God's chosen messenger. Jessica flashes a diabolical smirk, proposing they lean into the God scam to gain the tribe's total loyalty. Yilin stares at them, noting they look like straight-up evil. Jessica offers to teach them Arabic, which took her 2 months. Chin Tian and Yilin's souls visibly leave their bodies at the thought of wild Duolingo homework. But the heavens deliver. A system alert dings, granting Chin Tian a world language encyclopedia, while Jessica carries Hanik into the bathhouse, helps the scar-covered girl scrub down in a hot bath. After bath, Yilin whips up a feast full of meat and fresh fruits. Hanik takes one bite and starts bawling her eyes out, devastated that her starving tribe cannot share this luxury. That night, Hanik refuses a bed and sleeps on the cave floor, clutching her knives. Next morning, after Jessica runs language boot camp on a DIY board, the gang discusses travel plans. The bog is too dangerous with the Titanoboa lurking, so Chin Tian decides to craft a wooden sailboat to navigate around the coastline. He heads out to chop timber, only for Hanik to grab a stone axe to assist. Chin Tian tries to bench her due to her wounds, but she pouts and goes full speedrunner mode, chopping trees faster than a motorized lumberjack. In 3 days, they stockpile an entire mountain of lumber. Next up, nails. While Yilin and Jessica scout resources, Chin Tian and Hanik run the smelting furnace. Pumping the bellows, they superheat pyrite past 1500 degrees, releasing sulfur gases to yield pure iron. Chin Tian hammers the molten core on a rock, proudly flexing their fresh iron ingots. Modern engineering is officially online. Looking at the meager iron yield, Chin Tian realizes why real-world industries never use pyrite iron. 40% iron content means you sweat buckets for a tiny handful of metal. He pats Hanik on the head, telling her to take a breather before their afternoon shift. Watching her kick back and relax, Chin Tian notices she is finally gaining healthy weight, looking like a cute girl who are popular these days. He awkwardly clears his throat before things get weird. That afternoon, they cast the molten metal into Yilin's molds for nails, followed by a camp council over dinner. With winter coming, they won't get fresh fruits. Digging underground root cellars takes too long, so Chin Tian drops a genius idea. Let us invent canning. They hit the riverbanks to harvest quartzite, the prime ingredient for glass. Jessica wades through the water, casually asking if the hefty stone she found matches Chin Tian's favorite size, completely weaponizing her soaked top. Before our boy's brain can short-circuit, Yilin screams in excitement, holding up a sparkling chunk of pure gold. Hanik then casually drops an absolute flex, pulling out a golden boulder the size of a tennis ball. She points downriver, revealing the entire riverbed glowing packed with raw gold and diamonds. The crew loses their minds, cheering that they are filthy rich. Then reality hits like a brick. Shiny rocks cannot buy a hot meal or get them off this deserted island. Pocketing the gold and diamond, they focus on the real prize: baskets of quartzite. Mixing crushed silicon dioxide with seashell calcium and galena flux, Chin Tian melts the concoction at 800 degrees. With Yilin and Jessica forging blowpipes, Chin Tian dips the rod and inflates the molten glass bubble, lecturing them on rotation speed. The system drops 1,500 points into his account, right as Chin Tian fumbles his demonstration and pretends the wobbly glass was a planned teaching moment. He hands the pipe to Yilin. Her movements are pure poetry, spinning and shaping the incandescent glass with effortless artisan grace, to cut the excess neck without power tools. Others just stand impressed by her proficiency. Chin Tian uses their raw diamond as a glass cutter, thermal shocking it with cold water to produce flawless glass jars. Hanik stares at the clear jar, praising the shaman for crafting frozen ice from fire. Thanks to the system's real-time language pack, Chin Tian understands every word, but plays dumb so the girls don't go suspicious. While Yilin mass-produces mason jars, Chin Tian gathers potassium nitrate for gunpowder, then has another massive epiphany. Since they have optical glass, why not build a Kepler telescope? Using convex lenses for both objective and eyepiece, they can achieve wide-field reconnaissance. Chin Tian builds a foot-pedal grinding wheel, and Yilin grinds 5 precise convex lenses using abrasive leaves. Chin Tian slots them into a bamboo chassis, dialing the focal length. Aiming at a distant branch, he spots 2 yellow birds in razor-sharp 7x zoom. He passes it to Hanok, and the poor girl nearly jumps out of her skin, terrified that she is peering through the literal eye of God. With spare lenses repurposed into Firestarter magnifying glasses, it is time for the main event. Shipbuilding. Consulting his mental survival blueprint, Chin Tian opts for a Polynesian-style catamaran. Twin hulls joined by splints offer zero hull leakage, supreme buoyancy, and unmatched ocean stability. Jessica gleefully volunteers as captain, flexing her offshore navigation skills. Within a week of non-stop hammering, their twin-hull ship hits the waves, netting Chin Tian a sweet 3,000 system points. That evening, Hanok gazes through her spyglass under the starry sky, vowing to rescue her enslaved father. Back at camp, Yilin finds Chin Tian stressing over their voyage, soothing his anxiety with soft words and adorable blushing chemistry. But before their rom-com moment can blossom, Jessica steps in wearing nothing but a dripping wet bath towel, blinding them with maximum fan service. Chin Tian blasts an instant nosebleed, while Yilin shrieks in utter panic, demanding the blonde to put on some clothes. The next morning arrives with the high tide, signaling it is time to set sail. Chin Tian leaves Yilin behind on base defense duty alongside Fatty. While our Yilin gets a bit upset over being benched, but she quickly embraces her inner homemaker to make more canned fruit. Meanwhile, on the raft consisting of Chin Tian, Jessica, and Hanok pushes their catamaran into the deep blue ocean. Chin Tian immediately gets sea jitters, praying they do not run into a rogue tidal wave. Jessica playfully suggests praying to Poseidon. Hanok is totally unfazed since she used to fish in these waters before her tragic capture. Jessica takes full captain command, explaining how offshore cliff currents can trick amateur sailors before dragging them into watery graves. By noon, the wind dies down completely, and the blazing sun turns the ocean into a giant reflective microwave. With Hanok still healing from her injuries, Chin Tian and Jessica row the raft, getting 30-minute rest intervals just to keep their arms attached. When night falls and the wind picks up, they drop their wooden anchor to set camp under the moonlight. Jessica estimates they covered half of the 350-kilometer journey, then takes first watch while the others rest. Chin Tian wakes up after barely 3 hours, unable to sleep on the hard wooden deck, so he joins Jessica by the brazier. Chin Tian asks about her paleontology expeditions, which turns out to be a mistake. Jessica passionately nerds out about apex predators of the deep, cheerfully describing the 40-ton megalodon and the terrifying 21-meter mosasaurus. Realizing this island already spawns prehistoric giant snakes and ancient pandas, Chin Tian begs her to stop freaking him out. He redirects the conversation to giant tortoises just so he can sleep without having nightmares. By the next evening, Hanok spots a golden sandy beach. They successfully make landfall on the enemy side of the island. Pitching a tent by the shore, Hanok warns them that rival tribes patrol the coastline, forcing them to move carefully through the overgrown jungle next morning. Blackie flies overhead directing them, but something is completely off. The tribal village is in sight, yet it is completely deserted. Before Chin Tian can formulate a stealth plan, Hanok loses all patience and sprints headfirst into the village. Inside the settlement, the tribal warriors and the village elder are locked in a heated argument about mounting a rescue for their captured chief. Hanok bursts through the gates, shouting for everyone to stop. The tribe crowds around her in tears, only to drop tragic news. Her father went searching for her at the coast and got ambushed by enemy forces. Hanok tries rallying the village, declaring she crossed the fog-covered death zone and brought back a legendary shaman to save them. The warriors scoff, writing it off as an ancient fairy tale and assuming the poor girl is hallucinating from trauma. Carter, the tribe's towering alpha warrior, opposes her for putting faith in make-believe sorcerers. Right on cue, a shadow engulfs the village as Blackie swoops down from the sky with thunderous force. Chin Tian calls back the giant raptor looking like a main character arriving at a tournament arc, asking if anyone called for him. The villagers stare in disbelief, unconvinced that this normal-looking guy possesses godlike power. Reading the room, Chin Tian decides to bust out some modern sorcery. He whips out his metal lighter, flicking it with a crisp click to summon a dancing flame right out of thin air. The primitives lose their absolute minds, throwing themselves onto the dirt to worship this fire-conjuring deity. But Carter is still not sold, demanding the shaman prove his combat strength in a duel. Hannock proudly hypes Chin Tian up as a beast-taming serpent slayer, backing our boy into a corner. Chin Tian activates Cheetah's agility, blitzing forward in a blur of superhuman speed. Before anyone can blink, he presses 2 fingers against Carter's forehead, daring the muscle head to stand up against just 2 fingers. Carter roars, flexing every vein in his muscular frame, but remains utterly paralyzed in his wooden chair. The villagers watch in stunned silence as their strongest warrior is held down by a casual tap. Chin Tian calmly drops his hand, declaring the duel cancelled, while Carter stomps off in pure shame. Internally, Chin Tian is sweating bullets. He did not use super strength, just basic center of mass physics. You cannot stand up without leaning forward, and pinning the guy's forehead blocked his leverage completely. The Rada tribespeople bow down, begging our boy for help. Chin Tian puts on his best holy savior face, reassuring them. Right on cue, Jessica steps out. The villagers lose their minds, assuming she is another deity since her drip matches his. Jessica asks Chin Tian in English that how did he improve his Arabic so quick. Chin Tian whispers, wondering if she saw everything. Jessica hits him with a lazy smile, teasing that he is far more charming when he is secretive. Chin Tian turns back to the crowd, announcing that God personally sent them both, and the tribe just cheers. Elder Hamdel escorts the holy guests to a new yurt, bowing so low Chin Tian cringes inside. At the campfire, Hannock hypes Chin Tian up, reenacting how he blasted the giant serpent, while flexing his telescope calling it God's eye. Meanwhile, Carter sulks in the corner, swearing he only respects muscle, not stage magic. Inside the yurt, Chin Tian crunches the math. Out of 20 villagers, barely 10 can hold a spear. Right on cue, a cute kid enters the yurt bringing berries for them. Jessica asks for her name. It's a bye, she replies. Jessica notices her pale face and asks if she has something to say. Suddenly the kid breaks into tears, begging Chin Tian to save her people. Chin Tian pets her saying he will. Then he brings out dried pork for her to eat. She munches on it saying she haven't eaten all day, and is sorry about eating so much. Jessica reassures her, saying it's fine. She eat as much as she wants. Then Abai explains the situation, revealing the tribe is taking turns starving because enemy raids wrecked their hunting. Elder Hamdel enters the yurt and spots Abai, then starts scolding her for disturbing shaman. But Chin Tian steps in saying he loves children, and it's fine for her to be here. The elder presents a platter of fresh rabbit meat, mushrooms, and berries. Realizing this is their last bit of food, Chin Tian plays the prophet card. He announces the heavens ordered the feast to be returned to the children, giving his own jerky into the pile. Hamdel bawls his eyes out over this divine charity. That night, Jessica gives Chin Tian top-tier emotional support, reminding him not to solo carry everything when he has her and other people who care about him. By sunrise, Hamdel begs the shaman to defeat the enemy with his holy powers. Jessica clutches the save, bluffing that the shaman burned all his divine mana crossing the sea and must conserve energy for now. Leaving Jessica behind, Chin Tian and Hannock scouts ahead. After a grueling trek, they reach the other coast. Chin Tian peers through his telescope, and his jaw drops. Prowling the shore are massive brutes in horned helmets with dragon-headed longships. These are literal Vikings. You cannot negotiate with berserkers. You either become a slave or end up 6 feet under. Scanning the palisades, then Hannock spots the captured chief doing forced labor under sloppy guard. Suddenly, Blackie screeches an aerial warning as a Viking patrol approaches. Chin Tian dives into the bush, using his language skill to translate their Norwegian into clear understanding. A raider named Lalov complains about their scout getting eaten by the Midgardrum, while his buddy roasts him for failing to reach Valhalla to feast with Odin. Then comes the massive lore bomb. These Vikings sailed here seeking the mythical spring of Tuk everlasting for immortality using their captain's map, while an offshore Leviathan traps them on the island. Chin Tian connects the dots instantly. The Titanoboa could be their Midgardrum, a sea monster rules the waves, and most crucially, the Viking captain has an actual navigation map. That map is their golden ticket home. When the Hannock marvels at Chin Tian's language skills, Chin Tian bluffs that God granted him the gift of tongues. Then he gets ready to head back and plan an deep in the dense forest. Heavy war boots thunder through the dirt as Viking raiders scream in Norwegian, hunting down the tribe's hunting squad. Carter looks back, sees the horned helmets gaining ground, and instantly activates ruthless strategy. He tells Lagna to ditch the crying deadweight Arba right on the forest floor, arguing that if all the tribe's able-bodied hunters die today, the entire village will starve by winter anyway. Arba is sobbing his lungs out, begging not to be left behind, while Carter yells right back that true warriors do not fear the Reaper. Just as Carter shoves the kid aside to save the squad, Hanok drops in out of nowhere like an anime character, and Chin Tion lets loose a stone-tipped arrow that clips a charging raider. Hanok shouts at them to keep their dirty hands off her tribe. Carter immediately yells to stop them from blowing their war horn. But stone spears against forged steel shields is a brutal matchup. Carter lunges with raw barbarian power, skewering a raider through his wooden shield. When more reinforcements pour in, Hanok tells the squad to ease up. Hanok is intentionally drawing aggro and faking a struggle so Arba can be evacuated before a horn gets blown. While the squad plays distraction, our boy Chin Tion helps Arba, scoops him up, and carries him into the thicket. Chin Tion cannot help but admire Hanok. While normal teenagers would be curled up crying like Arba, she is throwing hands with 6-foot Viking berserkers without blinking. Once they reach a safe zone, Chin Tion whistles for Blackie. The raptor swoops over the canopy, dropping the green light signal to Hanok. With Arba confirmed safe, Hanok smirks, ducks under a massive swing, and slashes a raider's jugular in one fluid motion. Carter follows up with a bone-shattering spear swing, and the squad swarms the hornblower, but he still managed to do his job. Knowing enemy patrols will swarm the noise within minutes, the squad links up with Chin Tion. Instead of running blindly, our boy orders a tactical retreat into a hidden mountain cave until sundown. Behind them, a foul-mouthed Viking named Hedmont discovers the dead bodies and spots fresh blood trails, getting greedy over the 100 gold coin bounty per native. Luckily, Chin Tion patches Arba's wounds just in time to cut the trail cold. Inside the dark cave, everyone's stomachs start roaring like lawnmowers. Chin Tion casually opens his backpack, playing Santa Claus with modern rations. Carter tries to maintain his edgy stoic pride, but snatches his portion back the second Arba tries to steal it. At dawn, the crew slips past enemy lines and returns safely to the Rada gates. After ordering Arba to the medical yurt, Chin Tion heads inside to debrief with Jessica. Our blonde scholar confirms the intel. 100 heavily armored Vikings are occupying the island. But then she drops a completely unhinged smile, admitting she is genuinely thrilled to dissect historical Viking corpses for science. Chin Tion visibly gags at her freakish curiosity, quickly pivoting the topic to their Norse mythology lore. Chin Tion brings up the Midgard Urim and the Leviathan. Jessica deduces the Urim was likely the prehistoric titanoboa Chin Tion blew up, while the Leviathan is a massive prehistoric sea beast patrolling the deep waters, keeping everyone trapped on the island. But the real jackpot is the mythical spring of Tuck Everlasting. Jessica reveals ancient Norse legends claim a lone sailor found the spring, drank the water for eternal youth, and concealed the entire source inside a portable holy grail. If the immortality spring is really that compact, the Rada tribe could easily be hiding it. Jessica teases Chin Tion to interrogate the elder, and our boy just smiles at her words. Back at the camp, Jessica drops the grim reality check. The tribe is completely running out of food. Surviving day to day like this will make them weak. But instead of panicking, our boy Chin Tion taps into his inner strategist. He crouches down, sketches the entire Viking outpost on the dirt, and proposes the ultimate heist. The plan is pure criminal mastermind energy. Use rumors of the Eternal Spring as bait to pull the Viking defense force out. Infiltrate the compound, liberate the Rada prisoners, and clean out their pantry in one clean sweep. When Jessica worries about locked steel chains, Chin Tion drops a devilish smirk. Who needs a rusty iron key when you can brew aqua regia and melt their medieval padlocks like hot butter on toast? The next morning, the elder gifts Chin Tion a bowl of bland, half-raw meat to thank him for rescuing Arba. While chewing on the questionable meat, Chin Tion asks for the tribe's top craftsman. The elder introduces Irux, an absolute powerhouse of a woman who shapes stone spears with laser focus. The elder apologizes for her ignoring Chin Tion, but Chin Tion is actually impressed by her focus. Then suddenly she notices the shaman standing behind her and gets shocked. Chin Tion commissions an acid-proof container and tube for his chemical brew, and she eagerly flexes, promising airtight perfection. Next on the shopping list is animal bones. The elder immediately loses his mind, asking if the shaman is about to cast a forbidden voodoo curse with enemy skulls, or summon a demonic skeleton beast. Jessica quickly smooths things over, calling it sacred ritual tools, before the elder leads them to the sacred ossuary. Once alone, Chin Tion explains the Dr. Stone science. Mixing bone powder, carbon, and silicon dioxide to synthesize pure white phosphorus for matchsticks. He quickly ties a requisition letter to Blackie, launching his feathered drone back to Yilin for chemicals. With time to burn, our dynamic duo scours the perimeter for food, finding nothing until they run into Arba. The guy is shirtless in the bushes, rocking a giant green leaf on his side, trying to ambush swamp toads, saying he is using this leaf as a hat. Chin Tian stops dead in his tracks because that goofy leaf is actually a giant taro leaf. Arba leads them to an overgrown valley packed with massive taro plants. Arba warns them not to eat it, crying that he once took a bite and suffered 2 days of tongue paralysis. Chin Tian explains the basics of botany. Raw taro contains nasty calcium oxalate toxins, but boil that root tuber and you unlock gourmet starchy goodness. Jessica digs up a colossal taro tuber, and the squad hauls an entire mountain of root vegetables back to the village. The elder and Iruk stare at the muddy brown rocks in utter disbelief, but Chin Tian sets up a massive clay cauldron and gets to boiling. 10 agonizing minutes later, the sweet aroma of cooked starch fills the air. The elder, Arba, and Iruk's greedily holding the piping hot taro, screaming in pain from the heat before melting in pure culinary bliss. Realizing their starvation era is officially over, the elder drops to his knees with tears streaming down his face. Chin Tian mobilizes the entire tribe for a massive harvest, and by sunset, giant cauldrons are bubbling across the courtyard. The starving villagers gather around the steaming pots. The elder silences the crowd to honor their savior, and Chin Tian pumps his fist into the air, yelling bon appetit. The tribe erupts into absolute euphoria, feasting like kings. Little Abai shyly runs up with a handmade charm to thank Chin Tian for saving her family, and our boy gives her a wholesome head pat. Across the fire, even the hardened warrior Carter is quietly scarfing down taro roots, grunting that maybe this modern shaman is not an idiot after all. Lagna smirks and roasts his bro for being a massive tsundra, because deep down, the entire tribe is finally falling under Chin Tian's undeniable aura. With their bellies full of taro, Chin Tian gathers the entire tribe to drop some hard facts. Filling their stomachs is great, but the Vikings are closing in fast and their safe zone is shrinking. He rallies the clan, announcing they are going to build an escape fleet, raid the pirate base, break out the hostages, and sail everyone straight to his home territory. The Rada warriors roar in absolute loyalty, rushing down to the coast to start building. Chin Tian checks in on Irux, who has already forged his custom acid bottles. Except she spent extra hours hand-carving sacred decorative patterns onto the glass because our shaman deserves maximum drip. Chin Tian silently weeps. Appreciate the aesthetic, queen, but maybe speed up the industrial output next time. Time for some science on the shoreline. Chin Tian and Jessica turn the beach into an open-air chemical refinery. First, our boy gathers seashells, crushes and roasts them into calcium oxide, then mixes in water for calcium hydroxide. Meanwhile, Jessica boils down seawater to extract pure magnesium chloride. They mix the solutions to precipitate magnesium hydroxide, break out a battery for electrolysis, and synthesize pure hydrochloric acid by burning hydrogen and chlorine gas. After neutralizing the acid with magnesium hydroxide and cooking it dry, Chin Tian cooks up pure magnesium powder. To test the batch, they strike a spark, and the magnesium explodes into a blinding flashbang flare that illuminates the entire coastline. A passing tribal gets his retinas fried, screaming that the shaman is channeling divine celestial arts. Back at camp, Chin Tian drops revolutionary blueprints on Irux, mortise and tenon joinery. Since the tribe has 0 iron nails and rope rots in saltwater, interlocking with joints will make their boats tougher and more reliable. Jessica optimizes the plan so they only use complex joints on key stress points, cutting construction time down to just 3 days. Right on cue, Blackie descends from the sky, delivering professional glassware and a cute note from Yilin. Chin Tian feels that boyfriend guilt hitting hard, promising to make it up to her once they survive. Now for the main explosive asset. Chin Tian roasts animal bones with sand and charcoal in a sealed furnace, distilling toxic white phosphorus granules under cold water. Knowing raw white phosphorus turns people into spontaneous torches, he cooks it at high heat to convert it into stable red phosphorus. Add some potassium chlorate, pig bone gelatin, sand, and sulfur, and boom, authentic Swedish safety matches are born. Before striking the prototype, Jessica looks at Chin Tian, blushing crimson, whispering to be gentle. He strikes the match. A crisp flame roars to life, and the system rewards Chin Tian with a juicy 1,000 points. Jessica gloms onto him in an excited hug, almost crashing our boy's mind. To complete the heist toolkit, They brew aqua regia by condensing nitric acid and mixing it with hydrochloric acid. Metal chains do not stand a chance. Checking in on construction, Hannock is already bouncing around with Wolverine-level healing, and Irux has built 6 sturdy catamarans ready to sail. Fast forward 4 days, and it is showtime. Chin Tion lines up the Rada strike team and hands out the safety match kits. The warriors stare at the tiny wooden sticks, trying to rub them between their palms like cavemen. Then little Abai strikes the box. A brilliant spark bursts into a dancing flame. The warriors lose their minds, screaming that the girl just pulled fire out of thin air. Chin Tion smirks, demonstrates the flick of the wrist, and the entire army ignites their matches in unison. The stage is set, the science is locked in, and those pirates are about to get a very modern wake-up call. The Rada warriors are cradling their new matches. Happy to have this tool, Chin Tion climbs onto a rock, declaring that ship construction is officially done, and it is time to mount the rescue raid. Elder Hamdel is hyped beyond belief, ready to throw hands. Chin Tion picks his 7-man strike squad, featuring Ruth, the veteran axe-wielder, the twin sniper archers Harris and Hale, plus muscle powerhouses Carter and Hannock. Right before deployment, Jessica notices Chin Tion sweating bullets. She looks him dead in the eye, reminding him that hesitation gets you killed against ruthless pirates. Then, before he can even process the pep talk, she pulls his head straight into her chest for a protective hug, whispering for him to come back alive. The following evening, pirate sentries are freezing by a campfire, gossiping about their buddy getting bit in the rear by a beast and his body started rotting. So Captain beheaded and tossed him into the sea. Suddenly, a blinding pillar of light pierces the clouds. The pirates completely lose their minds, assuming the eternal spring of youth just spawned in the trees. Meanwhile, the Viking captain is on the docks, casually harpooning a shark mid-jump like a boss. A grunt interrupts his fishing to report the divine light. The captain grins, deciding this mystery light is going to lure in a massive school of human fish for him to slaughter. And he drops some gold for the guy who reported him. With 20 pirates chasing the light into the dark woods, Chin Tion scopes the base from the ridge. He stations the twin archers as sniper overwatch and leads Carter and Hannock to the rear palisade. The wooden wall is 3 meters tall, but Carter casually clears the spiked fence in a single effortless Olympic leap. Hannock vaults right behind him. Chin Tion thinks who is supposed to be the overpowered main character here. Then he triggers his cheetah agility skill, scaling the spikes in a neon blur. They drop into the courtyard undetected. The entire guard post is a ghost town. Slipping into the prison barracks, they find the captured Rada villagers locked in heavy iron cages. Hannock reunites with his tearful father, while Chin Tion gets straight to business. Mixing concentrated nitric and hydrochloric acid on the spot, he synthesizes pure aqua regia, racking up another clean 1,000 system points. He dumps the corrosive brew onto the padlocks. The iron chains sizzle, dissolving like cotton candy in water. The prisoners look at him like an actual god descending from the heavens. But as Chin Tion counts the freed villagers, dread kicks in. Only a few hostages are here out of a total around 100. Where is the rest of the tribe? Before he can investigate, an alarm horn echoes through the camp. Pirate reinforcements rush toward the cells, but the twin archers immediately rain down flaming arrows, setting the pirate food warehouse ablaze. The captain smells a rat, ordering most of his men to ignore the flames and corner the prison alleyway. With malnourished villagers struggling to climb the escape wall, the pirates charge in for an easy slaughter. Chin Tion steps forward and pulls out a massive customized pipe bomb. He sparks the fuse with a torch and chucks the explosive straight down their path. The charging pirates stare at the flying stick, wondering why a burning toy is landing at their feet. Right before it detonates into a colossal, apocalyptic fireball, the smoke from the dynamite blast clears. Coughing villagers scramble desperately over the spiked wooden palisade. Chin Tion keeps watch, knowing full well that cheap fireworks will not scare off these hardened killers forever. Right on cue, a pirate comes flying in the air. Carter lunges forward, shoving Chin Tion out of harm's way just as the Viking captain crashes down like a berserker raid boss. The maniacal pirate leader laughs, swinging his heavy steel axe with pure bloodlust. Carter catches the blade on his wooden staff. The raw shockwave rattles his entire skeleton. Seeing his grunts hesitating, the captain bellows a bounty of 200 gold coins for every severed native head. Suddenly, every pirate in the courtyard forgets about their burned eyebrows and charges in for the bag. Chin Tion lights an explosive, roasting their greed before popping the explosive shot right into their vanguard. A claw-wielding pirate lunges at Chin Tion, but Hannock intercepts the strike with twin daggers, screaming for their shaman to retreat. Up on the high ridge, Horus and Hale prove why you always invest in sniper support. Flaming arrows rain down into the courtyard, embedding straight into wooden shields. The pirates mock the attack until the arrows burst with concentrated white phosphorus, scattering chemical fire that melts right through their shield, while the goons burn like cheap birthday candles. Chin Tian snipes another charging bandit, but out of nowhere, a massive executioner steps out from the shadows, raising a heavy battle axe to take Chin Tian's head, just before the blade drops. A pair of heavy iron chains violently blocks the steel. It is the captured Rada chief himself, flexing barehanded warrior supremacy. The chief tells Chin Tian to climb the wall while he holds down the alleyway. Chin Tian scrambles up the spikes, looking back just in time to see the chief deliver a savage clothesline, followed by an insane 540-degree flying chain kick that sends two pirates flying into the shadow realm. This absolute Chad did not need saving. He was just waiting for a workout. While the chief is running an underground fight club, Carter is on his back foot against the captain's overwhelming brute force. His weapon is splintering under every swing, and Chin Tian is down to his final arrows. Chin Tian pulls out a customized flash grenade packed with gunpowder and magnesium carbonate, shouting for his allies to shut their eyes. The canister pops with a blinding, celestial flash, instantly frying the night vision of every pirate in the corridor. With the enemies screaming and rubbing their blinded eyes, Chin Tian drops a thick smoke canister as a parting gift, leading his entire strike team over the wall into the dark forest. Behind them, the furious captain stomps through the smoke, threatening to slaughter his own men unless they hunt down the escapees before sunrise. Dozens of torch-bearing search parties flood into the midnight jungle, but Chin Tian turns this into a stealth video game tutorial. The clueless pirates walk around holding giant torches like neon beacons, practically handing Chin Tian their exact locations. The squad sneaks past one search party after another, moving like ghosts between the trees. Just as the villagers let out a sigh of relief, the bushes rustle. Two pirate trackers emerge right in front of them with drawn weapons. These clever scumbags snuffed out their torches to set a silent ambush, bragging about their wolf-like noses. Before the scouts can celebrate, Carter, Hannock, and Chief burst out of the darkness. Carter lands a thunderous Superman punch, daggers slash across throat lines, and the chief pulverizes a pirate with his chained fists. But as the scouts drop, the others scream for backup and blowing horn. The pirate scout blows his horn with all his might. Before the echo even fades, twin arrows punch straight through both scouts. Horus and Hale dropped in right on schedule. But seeing fresh corpses in ultra-high definition gives Chin Tian an instant reality check. There is zero time for existential dread, because that horn blast alerted every bandit in the forest. Dozens of torch-bearing goons swarm through the trees, arguing over who gets to claim the native bounty. Realizing 15 armed bandits will turn their escape squad into minced meat, Chin Tian decides to pull the ultimate move. He volunteers to be the bait, while the chief and Hannock dramatically offer to sacrifice themselves in classic shonen fashion. Chin Tian flashes a confident anime protagonist smile, telling them to trust his strategy and meet up with Jessica at the shore. He sparks another blinding flash canister into the mob, lights a torch to paint a giant target on his back, and sprints into the dark woods. The pirates take the bait instantly and start chasing Chin Tian. Chin Tian pops his agility skill. Blue lightning crackles around his body as he hits top speed. The pirates lose their minds, convinced he unlocked super speed by drinking secret holy water from the mythical eternal spring. To double down on the panic, they blow a massive war horn that echoes through the mountain. Suddenly, torches ignite in every direction. Chin Tian is completely surrounded in a glowing circle of death. Backed against a corner with zero escape routes, he tosses his absolute final flash grenade. While the bandits are clutching their burning retinas, Chin Tian books it straight toward the edge of a razor-sharp seaside cliff. The pirates chase him down, laughing that he cornered himself. But our boy does not even tap the brakes. Trusting the handmade glider crafted by Irux, he yeets himself into the pitch-black abyss, screaming prayers to every single deity as the parachute snaps open. The pirates stare over the edge in disbelief, assuming this lunatic just ended his own playthrough. While the pirate grunts stand around arguing, the Viking captain emerges with pure demon energy. When a terrified minion stammers that the native leaped into the sea, the captain delivers the most unhinged human resources review ever. He literally tosses the minion off the ledge so he can go search for that eternal spring in person. The captain roars for the rest of his crew to find a path down immediately. Dead or alive, hundreds of feet below, Chin Tian lands safely on a tiny rocky shelf, Thanks to quick tidal math, he knows the high tide will not drown him tonight, but being trapped on a freezing rock is definitely good experience. By sunrise, the rescued tribe members make it to the beach where Jessica is waiting with the escape rafts. When the chief admits that Chin Tion played meat shield, Jessica just smirks with total golden-eyed queen energy. Knowing full well her partner is way too stubborn to die, back at the cliff, Chin Tion shivers under a parachute while the pirates scream from above, desperately trying to figure out how to climb down. Swimming across is a suicide mission, and the driftwood on the shore is too rotten to build a raft. Just when the situation looks like a total softlock, a majestic screech echoes from the clouds. Blackie swoops down, landing right on Chin Tion's arm. Chin Tion quickly scribbles a note with his exact coordinates, warning the squad about the search parties, and straps the cylinder to Blackie's leg. With a powerful flap of its wings, the giant bird shoots off into the morning sky. Now all Chin Tion has to do is sit tight and wait for his rescue squad to roll up in style. As evening rolls in, Chin Tion is sitting on his lonely rock expecting to freeze until tomorrow. But before he can even start his mental survival podcast, Blackie screeches across the sky with a rescue boat speeding in like a torpedo. Hannock and Carter are rowing with enough raw horsepower to match a Mustang, while poor Lagna looks like his soul left his body 3 miles back trying to keep up with others. Since it is pitch black, they pitch a tent inside a sea cave to recharge before hitting the oars at dawn. The moment the canoe pulls up to the evacuation beach, the entire Rada tribe erupts into cheers, while Jessica storms over looking relieved to see him unharmed. Chin Tion checks in, confirms everyone is ready to bounce, and gives the green light to set sail. Under the cover of total darkness, the entire tribal flotilla glides across the ocean, dodging pirate patrols. After Jessica orders the fleet to link boats for the night, Chin Tion passes out from pure exhaustion. He wakes up to the glorious aroma of hot food as Jessica serves him a warm meal under the stars. Between bites, he drops the lore about his death-defying cliff dive, earning a hug from Jessica, who has genuinely relieved her hero in safe and sound. Meanwhile, back at the Rada village, the angry Viking captain kicks down the front gate with absolute villain rage, fully expecting a massacre, only to find an empty ghost town. The captain slams the table in pure fury, realizing he got completely outplayed, and orders his goons to comb every inch of the perimeter. Unlucky for him, our squad already made landfall on Chin Tion's home island. The refugees march through the jungle, terrified when a ferocious roar echoes from the trees, only for Chin Tion to flex that his personal guard is literally a giant beast. They step through the wooden gates and Yilin opens her arms with pure sunshine energy, only for all 47 tribal members to hit the dirt in instant worship, bowing to their new third divine shaman. Yilin has an existential crisis over the sudden cult status, but Jessica gracefully takes over crowd control so Chin Tion can deal with his pink-haired angel. Yilin immediately lunges in with a tearful tackle hug, scolding him for barely sending text messages before letting him off the hook. Over by the fire pit, the tribe gets their first taste of modern smoke-dried spiced pork and instantly weeps tears of joy, realizing island cuisine just peaked. Looking at 50 people cramming the camp until even Fatty the panda looks claustrophobic, Chin Tion realizes his cozy base needs a massive expansion pack. Jessica sneaks in for her victory hug, calling him her hero while Yilin flusters in the background. Chin Tion organizes sleeping arrangements like a pro shelter manager, tucking the vulnerable into the cave while the warriors sleep by the fire line. After a hot bath washes away 2 days of cliff grime, he collapses into bed next to both girls who are totally knocked out from pulling all-nighters, waking up the next afternoon with both beauties using him as a body pillow. He scrambles out of the tent in pure blushing panic. Zero time to slack off, because the base expansion grind begins immediately. Team 1 chops bamboo with Chin Tion to build housing. Team 2 slays river fish with Jessica's hunting crew, and Team 3 clears ground with Yilin. By nightfall, massive bonfires light up as the tribe links hands in a joyful dance. Jessica drags Yilin into the circle to celebrate, but as Chin Tion sits on the sidelines, the bearded tribal chief casually asks if he can sit next to him. In fluent English, Chin Tion freezes in pure shock.